Chapter 1. On a day in early summer, when evening came, torrential rain would suddenly fall. The sky was gloomy and dark clouds pressed down on the dignified and imposing palace walls. The originally magnificent palace darkened under the cover of the dark clouds, as if it was a huge cage, trapping the people inside firmly. In the spacious bedroom, the curtains seemed to be very old as there was a thick layer of dust. It was originally a hot day, but one could actually feel some coldness. The clothes and jewelry were scattered on the ground, as if a catastrophe had just happened. The female half knelt on the ground and looked up at the person in front of her. This woman was only in her 30s, but her face was as old as an old woman's. Between her brows was heavy and vicious, and her eyes were like stagnant water with ripples, like a dried-up well that had been left behind for a long time, unable to shed any tears, yet carrying a bottomless hatred. "Your ladyship, please." The eunuch beside her held the white silk in his hands and said in an impatient tone, "This one is still waiting to report to His Majesty." Shun Miao's eyes landed on the eunuch, and after a long silence, she slowly opened her mouth and said in a hoarse voice, "Xiao Lizi, when Ben Gong promoted you, you were still a dog by Gao Gonggong's side." The eunuch arrogantly raised his head. "Your ladyship, the present is different from the past." "The present is different from the past." Shun Miao muttered and suddenly laughed out loud. "What a good, the present is different from the past." Just because of one sentence, the present is different from the past. Those servants and officials that were respectful to her in the past could now order her around. Because of the present is different from the past, she would end up with a 3-chi long white silk with her head separated from her body. What was the past and where did the present start from? Was it from when Mei Foran entered the palace, or when the crown prince was deposed, or when the eldest princess died tragically in marriage? Or when she returned to the palace after being a hostage in the Qing country for 5 years? From the past to the present, from the Empress to the deposed Empress, it was all because of one sentence from Fu Xiuyi. The entire court of civil and military officials could change their expressions, and the Mingqi's rivers and mountains could be inverted. What a good, the present is different from the past. The bedroom door opened with a creak, and a pair of dragon-embroidered boots stopped in front of Shun Miao. Above it was the corner of the bright yellow robe. "Seeing as you have followed this emperor for 20 years, this emperor will grant you an intact corpse. Give your thanks." The emperor's son said. Shun Miao slowly raised her head and looked at the man high above. Time did not leave any mark on his face. He was as handsome as he was at the beginning. He was the world's wise ruler, the rightful son of heaven. He was the man she had been infatuated with for 20 years and her husband who had helped each other in difficult times. Now he said to her, "We will grant you an intact corpse. Thank me." "Why?" Shun Miao asked with difficulty. He did not answer. "Why do you want to wipe out the entire Shen family?" she asked. Prince Ding Fu Xiuyi. The late emperor had 9 sons, and each of the 9 sons had their own merits, but the crown prince was often ill and the late emperor was slow to appoint a new crown prince. She admired Prince Ding's peerless talent and disregarded her family's dissuasion. She finally got what she wanted, but also tied the entire Shen family and Prince Ding together. It was because of this that she did her best to assist Prince Ding. From a pampered daughter who did not know anything to a Wangfei who participated in court matters, she gave advice and finally settled the country. On the day Fu Xiuyi ascended the throne, he made her the empress, a motherly model of the world, and was very glorious. She thought that she was the most glorious empress. The prince's rebellion had just been quelled and the Mingqi's foundation was unstable. The Xiongnu invaded and the neighboring countries were eyeing covetously. In order to borrow troops, Shun Miao voluntarily went to the Qing country to be a hostage. When she left, her daughter and son were still 1 month old. Fu Xiuyi even said, "Zhen will personally bring you back." 5 years later, she finally returned to Mingqi, and there was an additional beautiful and talented Mei Foran in the inner palace. Chapter 2. Mei Foran was the daughter of an official that Fu Xiuyi met during the Eastern expedition. He liked her understanding and brought her back to the palace. Mei Foran gave birth to a prince Fushang for Fu Xiuyi. Fushang was deeply favored by the emperor, but it was Shun Miao's son, the crown prince Fu Ming, who did not receive the emperor's favor. Fu Xiuyi once said in front of all the civil and military officials, Fu Ming's temperament is too soft. It is still Fu Shang who is more like my son. His words clearly meant that he wanted to change the crown prince. Mei Foran made Shen Miao feel a sense of crisis, and in the palace, Shen Miao and Mei Foran fought for 10 years. Mei Foran repeatedly gained the upper hand and even urged Fu Xiuyi to marry his daughter, Princess Wanyu, to the Xiongnu. The Xiongnu were aggressive and ruthless, and Princess Wanyu died of illness during the marriage and was immediately cremated. Everyone knew that there was something fishy about it, but as the mother, Shen Miao was helpless. In the end, it still came to this day. Fu Xiuyi wrote an imperial edict that the Shen family rebelled and the crown prince was deposed. He committed suicide to apologize, and she, the Empress, was also deposed and obtained 3 feet of white silk. She only wanted to ask why. Shen Miao said, "Fu Xiuyi, do you have a conscience? You and I have been husband and wife for more than 20 years, and I don't think I have done anything wrong to you. When you ascended to the throne, it was my Shen family that helped you. When you went to war and the Xiongnu invaded, I helped you write the surrender letter. When you wanted to rope in the ministers, I knelt down and begged them to help. Going to a neighboring country as a hostage, suffering, what did you give me in return? When Mei Foran wanted Wanyu to marry, you drafted the decree, and Wanyu died of illness when she was only 16. Everyone knows that you favor Fu Shang and neglect Fu Ming. Now that you've massacred my entire family and are at death's door, let me ask you why?" Shen Miao. Fu Xiuyi frowned, and there was no trace of emotion in his expression, as if he was a cold statue. When Imperial Father was alive, they had already discussed how to deal with the few aristocratic families. The Shen family's merits were too high, and the lord could not stay for long. It was Zhen who persuaded Imperial Father that Zhen had kept the Shen family for another 20 years, and it was already a great grace to the Shen family. This was already a great gift to the Shen family. Shen Miao's body swayed. These days she had cried too much that her tears could no longer flow out. She faced Fu Xiuyi and said word by word, "Why keep the Shen family? It is not your benevolence, nor is it your grace. You only want to use the Shen family's military power to increase the weight of the fight for the throne. When the cunning rabbit is dead, the hound will be cooked. Now that the country is settled, you burn the bridge after crossing the river. Fu Xiuyi, you are so ruthless." Shen Miao. Fu Xiuyi shouted angrily, as if his sore spot was poked. He snorted coldly and said, "You take care of yourself." Finishing, he flicked his sleeves and left. Shen Miao crouched on the ground and clenched her fists. This was the man that she had loved for a lifetime. In the palace, she and Mei Foran fought for favor for him, but at the end she discovered that it was not fighting for favor, but this man's heart had never been on her. Those whispers of love were just jokes that were put on for the sake of the occasion. She spat out a mouthful of blood. "What's wrong with big sister? You look so pathetic," a sweet voice said. The woman was dressed in a light yellow gown. She had a beautiful face and a willowy waist. She looked like a fairy, and her posture was elegant and moving. This was the Mei Foran who had fought with Shen Miao for a lifetime, and victory was in her grasp. Behind Mei Foran stood 2 females dressed in palace attire. Shen Miao was surprised for a moment. Shen Qing, Shen Yu. This was the 2nd and 3rd household, the daughters of 2nd Shu and 3rd Shu. Why were her 2 older cousins in the palace? "His Majesty has summoned us sisters to the palace." Shen Yu covered her lips and smiled. 5th younger sister need not be surprised. Previously 5th younger sister loved to help us sisters inquire about matchmaking, but now it is no longer necessary. "His Majesty treats us sisters very well." "You..." Shen Miao's heart was like a tumultuous sea. In a flash she seemed to understand something that she had never thought clearly before. Her voice was somewhat incredulous. "You... both of you delayed marrying just for today?" "That is not so." Shen Qing took a step forward. "At that time His Majesty and my father and 3rd Shu had formed an alliance. As long as you are persuaded to marry His Majesty, there will be a day when us sisters will have the same destination." In the beginning, when Shen Miao was able to marry Fu Xiuyi, the 2nd and 3rd household had put in a lot of effort. Thinking about it now, when she fell in love with Fu Xiuyi, it seemed that it was because of 2nd and 3rd Shen who kept mentioning Prince Ding's young talents, which made her have a good impression of him. So it was an agreement that was reached long ago? So the 2nd and 3rd household had hidden evil intentions and was waiting for everything to happen today? Shun Qing was afraid that Shun Miao did not understand and continued. His Majesty is full of spirit and us sisters have admired him for a long time. Unfortunately only eldest Bo holds great power, and had no choice but to let fifth younger sister get ahead of him. Fifth younger sister had enjoyed a lot of good fortune in the past few years, and now the time should come. Xin Qing. Shun Miao suddenly straightened up and said loudly, His Majesty confiscated the Shun family but let the two of you enter the palace. How can the second and third household be safe and sound? Of course the second and third household will be safe and sound. Shun Yu covered her mouth and laughed, because we are great meritorious officials. The evidence of eldest Bo's rebellion was pointed out by our two households in the name of righteousness. Fifth younger sister. His Majesty still want to bestow our two households high officials. Shun Miao looked at her two older cousins in shock and said, Are you all crazy? How can there be intact eggs when the nest is overturned? The Shun family is one family. Fu Xiui wanted to deal with the Shun family but you all actually framed your own family. Our own family. Fifth younger sister. We have never acknowledged the first household as our own family. Shun Qing sneered. Moreover you have enjoyed too much. Now that the crown prince is dead, the princess is no longer around and the Shun family has perished, it is better for you to go to the Yellow Springs and reunite with them. Mei Foran leisurely stepped forward and said with a smile, Older sister. The country is settled and you should retire. After fighting for 10 years, Shun Miao at the end lost in a mess and lost too miserably. She lost to the point that her son and clan perished and became a big joke. She said hatefully, If Bengong does not die, you all will be concubines. Chenggong do it. Mei Foran gave a look to the eunuch. The stout eunuch immediately took a few steps forward and grabbed Shun Miao's neck with one hand and wrapped the white silk on the plate around Shun Miao's neck with the other. With a strong pull, the white silk tore the flesh and the bones made a crisp sound. The female who was struggling on the ground widened her eyes and silently swore in her heart. Her son, her daughter, her parents, brothers, sisters, servants, the entire Shun family were all harmed. Fu Xiui, Mei Foran, Shun Qing, Shun Yu, all the people who harmed her, those who harmed her loved ones, if there was an afterlife, a debt of blood must be paid with blood. When will I die? I will die with you. Chapter 3. The big black and white courtyard, blue stone slabs, vermilion pillars and carved railings were engraved with complex crabapple patterns. It had just rained for an entire night, and the raindrops rolled down from the banana leaves into the ground. The purple gold incense burner on the table was made into a delicate little beast shape and the fragrance it exhaled was the waterwood fragrance, which smelled exceptionally refreshing in the early autumn. The four corners of the bed were hung with tassels and the color was bright. On the soft couch, two tall maids were carefully fanning the person on the bed. The weather is cold and one would fall into the water and the fever would be terrible. Young lady had slept for an entire day and night, and the physician said that one should be awake by now. Why is there no movement? The green-clad maid could not hide her anxiety. Guyu, it has already been more than an hour. Why is the physician not here yet? The other purple-clad maid said. Second foreign side is watching closely. This is considered a scandal, and the residence is trying to hide it. Guyu looked at the person on the bed. Foreign and master are not in the capital and eldest young master is also not around. Old foreign is also biased towards the eastern courtyard. Bai Lu and Shuangjiang went to look for the physician and have yet to return. Could it be that they were stopped? This is forcing young lady to a dead end. No, I have to go out and take a look. Just as the words were spoken, one heard a weak sound coming from the person on the bed. Young lady is awake. The purple-clad maid cried out in surprise and quickly ran to the bedside. One saw the young lady on the bed rubbing her forehead and slowly sitting up. Ding! Shun Miao murmured. This servant is here. The purple-clad maid smiled as she held Shun Miao's hands. Does young lady feel better? After sleeping for an entire day and night, seeing that the fever had subsided but one did not wake up, this servant was thinking of going to look for the physician again. Young lady, do you want to drink some water? Guyu handed over a cup of tea. Shun Miao looked at the two people in front of her with some confusion. She had 4 first-ranked maids, Jingzhe, Guyu, Bai Lu and Shuangjiang. They were all intelligent and sensitive maids. Unfortunately in the end, none of them managed to stay. When she was a hostage in the Qin country, in order to protect her from being humiliated by the crown prince of the Qin country, Guyu died in the hands of the crown prince. By Lu and Shuangjiang, one died on the way to Wan Yu's marriage and the other died fighting for favor with Mei Furan in the inner palace. As for Jingzhe, she was born to be the most beautiful. In the beginning, in order to help Fu Xiuyi ascend the throne and rope in the powerful ministers, Jingzhe willingly became a concubine, and used her beauty as a reason for the powerful ministers to bow down to her. Finally, the wife of the powerful minister found a reason to scold her to death. After knowing that Jingzhe was dead, Shan Miao cried loudly and almost had a miscarriage. Now Jingzhe was standing in front of her perfectly fine and her brows were still as beautiful as a painting. Guyu looked at her with a smile and the two maids were 14 to 15 years of age, which made Shan Miao dazed for a moment. After a while, she smiled bitterly and closed her eyes. This illusion before death is too real. What is young lady talking about? Guyu placed the teacup at the side and reached out to touch Shan Miao's forehead. Could it be that the fever is muddled? The hand that touched her forehead was cold, comfortable and real. Shan Miao suddenly opened her eyes and her gaze suddenly became sharp. She slowly lowered her head and looked at her own hands. That was a pair of white and slender hands with neatly trimmed nails. It was round and cute, and one look and one could tell that it was a pair of hands that were pampered. That was not her hands. Her hands were already rough from accompanying Fu Xiuyi to deal with the court affairs and assessing the situation. She held a pen and looked at the account books one by one. In Qin country, she was ordered around like a servant. In the inner palace, she fought with Fu Ming and Wan Yu. In the cold palace, she washed clothes. Her hands were full of calluses and her joints were swollen and thin. How could she have such a delicate appearance? Bring me a mirror, Shan Miao said. Her voice was still very weak, but her tone was firm. Chapter 4. Guyu and Jingzhe looked at each other in dismay. Finally Jingzhe went to take a mirror and handed it to Shan Miao. In the bronze mirror, the young female had a round face, a full forehead, a pair of big almond eyes that were slightly red, a round nose and a small mouth. It was still a face that had not shed its childishness. It could not be said to be beautiful, but it was fresh and adorable with a timid look. That was the face of a young female that was once praised by the imperial family as bringing good fortune to her husband. The mirror in Shan Miao's hand suddenly fell to the ground and made a crisp sound. The sound of the fragments hit her heart and set off a huge storm. She fiercely pinched herself and 2 lines of hot tears rolled down. The heavens did not disappoint people. The heavens did not disappoint her. She had returned. Guyu and Jingzhe jumped in shock. Guyu quickly picked up the fragments on the ground and anxiously said, "Young lady, be careful not to prick your feet. Why is young lady crying?" Jingzhe took a handkerchief to wipe Shan Miao's face but saw Shan Miao's strange expression, as if she was crying and laughing at the same time as she muttered, "I have returned." She grabbed Jingzhe. "What year is it now?" Jingzhe was somewhat afraid but still honestly answered, "Mingqi's 68th year. What is wrong with young lady? Do you feel uncomfortable?" Mingqi's 68th year. Mingqi's 68th year. Shan Miao's eyes widened. Mingqi's 68th year, when she was 14 years old, was the year she met Fu Xiuyi and was infatuated with him. She even forced her father to marry her, and requested to marry Fu Xiuyi. Now, Guyu's words sounded in her ears. Young lady must not scare these servants. The fever has just subsided. Could it be that one's mind is not clear? Eldest young lady is really too ruthless. Is this not wanting young lady's life? Shan Miao spent most of her time by Fu Xiuyi's side running errands for him, and the days in the Shen residence were tasteless. But she remembered this matter clearly. She remembered everything that was related to Fu Xiuyi clearly. Shen Qing told her that Fu Xiuyi was coming to the Shen residence to visit 2nd and 3rd Shu, and pulled her along to secretly take a look. When they reached the garden, Shen Qing pushed her down from the rockery. He was fished out from the pond, dripping wet. At that time there were other officials and colleagues who were with him, and they only treated it as a joke at the Shen residence. The matter of her being infatuated with Prince Ding had already spread throughout the capital half a year ago, and this time it was just a joke. In her last life, after she woke up, she accused Shen Qing of pushing her into the pond, but no one believed her. Shen Miao was extremely wronged and was punished by Old Foreign to be grounded in the temple, causing her to be unable to go out during the Mid-Autumn Festival. Shen Yu secretly released her and brought her to the Chrysanthemum Appreciation Banquet at Yanbei Tang, and made a complete fool of herself. Shen Miao closed her eyes. There were 3 households in the Shen family. The first household was Shen Xian, who was Shen Miao's father and the son of the old general's first wife. The first wife died of illness in her middle age, and the old general married a second wife, who gave birth to the second wife, Shan Gui, and the third wife, Shan Wan. After the death of the old general, the second wife became the present old Furen. The Shen family did not separate from the family. The 3 brothers supported each other and had a good relationship, which became a much-told story. The Shen family had been in the military for generations, and in Shen Xian's generation, other than the first household who held military power, the second and third household took the path of civil officials. Shen Xian was out on expeditions all year round, and Shen Furen also followed her husband to the army. Shen Miao had always been placed in the Shen residence and was personally taught by old Furen and the 2 Shen Jiu. After teaching and teaching, she became a good-for-nothing, ignorant and incompetent person who would shamelessly stick to any man she met. In the past life, she only felt that her Shen Jiu and old Furen treated her especially well, and she did not need to learn the rules and etiquette that Shen Yu and Shan Qing needed to learn. Now it seemed that it was just a lame attempt to kill her through flattery. Bullying that her parents and elder brothers were not by her side, one set in front of her and another set behind her back. This only made Shen Xian and Shen Furen feel that this daughter was more stubborn than before every time they returned to the residence. In this lifetime she wanted to see how these people would shamelessly repeat the same old tricks. Just as she was thinking, she heard the maid who was sweeping the courtyard running in. "Young lady, second young lady is here to see you." Chapter 5. Second Miss is here to see you. Jingzhi's expression was somewhat uneasy. Of all times to come at this time. Young lady's body has not recovered, and one is not afraid of catching a cold. Gu Yu pushed Jingzhi's arm, but her expression was also very worried. Shen Miao heaved a sigh of relief in her heart when she saw this. The 4 maids by her side were all personally selected and trained by Shen Xian and Shen Furen. They were both loyal and quick-witted. What was the situation of the Shen family? She was too young to see through the hidden intentions of the second and third household, but the maid was able to see the clues. Before he could say anything, he saw a young girl walking in from outside. The girl looked to be about 15 or 16 years old. She wore a pale pink robe with a chrysanthemum pattern and a moon-white pleated skirt. Her hair was combed into a tassel bun. Her skin was fair, and her features were elegant and beautiful. Her entire body was filled with a strong scholarly aura, and she seemed decent and dignified. When he saw her, he quickly walked to the bed and worriedly said, "Fifth sister, do you feel better? After I found out that you fell into the water, I was worried for a long time, but the people of Yujiao Garden said that you wanted to rest, so I didn't dare to disturb you. Today when I heard that you woke up, I dared to come over." Shen Miao looked at the young female in front of her. This was the daughter of the 3rd household of the Shen family, Shan Yu. Out of the 3 daughters of the Shen family, Shen Qing was cheerful and magnanimous. Shen Yu was famous for her talents, and only Shen Miao had a wooden character, timid and without talent. Outsiders praised her for being chaste and virtuous, but in fact everyone knew that she did not have any good points and was the most unpresentable daughter of the Shen family. In the last lifetime before Shen Miao married, she had the best relationship with Shen Yu. Shen Yu's temperament was gentle and considerate, and many times she would help Shen Miao come up with ideas. It was just that at that time Shen Miao could not see whether the idea was good or bad, and was only grateful to this older cousin sister who did her best to help. This time Shen Yu's visit was most likely to plead for leniency for Shan Qing. Sure enough, Shen Yu opened her mouth and said, "Fifth younger sister. Eldest sister also made a mistake that day, and since things have come to this, one hope that fifth younger sister can forgive her once." Hearing that fifth sister had a fever, the eldest sister also blamed herself. "After fifth younger sister recovers, can you spare eldest sister this time? She did not deliberately let you make a fool of yourself in front of His Highness Prince Ding." It would have been fine if he did not say those words, but he had to mention the words Prince Ding in front of Shan Miao. Everyone knew that Prince Ding was the apple of Shen Miao's eye. Shun Miao had the temperament of being able to take grievances, but when it was related to Prince Ding, she would definitely not give in. If she did not mention Prince Ding, perhaps Shun Miao would just let it be. This time Shen Yu deliberately mentioned Prince Ding. If it was not to provoke a dispute between her and Shan Qing, then what was it? It was the same in her previous life. She had just woken up when Shen Yu rushed over to plead for leniency for Shan Qing. This plea made Shen Miao furious. For the sake of his sweetheart, he accused Shan Qing of pushing her into the water in front of old Madame Dowager. But Shan Qing did not admit it, and the surrounding people also said that they did not see Shan Qing push Shen Yu. Old Foreign was biased towards the second and third household and naturally took the opportunity to lecture her for not knowing self-respect at such a young age, and even tried to slander her older sister and grounded her. Afterwards this matter was spread to the Imperial Academy and Shun Miao became the laughingstock of her classmates. Under the shame and indignation, she did not go to the Imperial Academy anymore. Later on, she gradually faded out from the circle of noble females in the capital. Now thinking about it, her vision had always been limited to the world that these people in the general residence created for her. She thought that she was virtuous but did not know that in the eyes of outsiders, she was weak and ignorant. She thought that loving Prince Ding was courageous and straightforward, but did not know that outsiders said that she had no sense of shame. The result of these deliberate teachings led to a messy impression of her in the early stages. Even though she successfully married Fu Xiuyi, she was still said to not be able to be seen in public. Even when the world compared her with Mei Foreign, they would only say that she was stupid and ignorant. What a stupid past! Shen Yu worriedly caressed Shun Miao's shoulders, and her lips quietly revealed a trace of smile. She knew that with Shun Miao's temperament, as long as Fu Xiuyi was mentioned, she would definitely fly into a rage. But after waiting for a long time there was no reaction. Shen Yu suspiciously looked over, and saw the young female in front of her looking at her with a smile. The young female's face was still very pale and her lips were dry. Only her pair of dark eyes were as bright as grapes. Shen Miao's eyes were the best looking. She had big almond-shaped eyes that were ignorant and as timid as a newborn puppy. It was just that she usually had a wooden expression, and had wasted the spiritual energy of her eyes. Now that pair of almond-shaped eyes were still round, but the expression was very different. There was some coldness and no emotions. It was not like a wooden expression but more like a condescending look. Shen Yu quivered. She did not know why, but there was an indescribable trembling in her heart. It was as if she was not facing a stupid dumb goose but a person of high status. How could there be such a feeling? Naturally she did not know that the Shun Miao in front of her was no longer that Shun Miao. The Shun Miao in front of her was the Shun Miao who had experienced the fight for the throne, the chaos of war, the fight for favor, the loss of her son and the extinction of her clan. It was the Empress of Mingqi and Empress Shun who was in charge of the inner palace and had supreme power over the 6 palaces. She was stunned for a long time until the young female in front of her rubbed her forehead and softly said, "Second older sister's words are too serious. This matter has nothing to do with eldest older sister. It was me who fell down. Fifth younger sister." Shen Yu did not expect Shun Miao to say that, and was stunned for a moment before she reacted. She shook her head. "Fifth younger sister must not wrong yourself." "How would I wrong myself?" Shun Miao smiled and interrupted her words. "It is only a small matter. My head is still a little dizzy and want to rest for a while. If there is anything, one can talk about it at Zuma's place tomorrow." Since the words were said to this point, Shen Yu could not say anything more. Even though she found it strange that Shun Miao did not treat her warmly today, she attributed it to Shun Miao making a fool of herself in front of Fu Xiuyi, so her mood was unhappy. After speaking a few more words, Shen Yu then left. After Shen Yu left, Gu Yu then said, "Our young lady was pushed into the water and almost lost her life but came to plead for eldest young lady." "Plead then plead. Why does it sound like that is not the case?" Gu Yu was vaguely reminding Shun Miao that Shen Yu did not have good intentions. When the sandpiper and clam fight, the fisherman benefits. She most likely wanted to be the fisherman. Shen Miao said lightly. Gu Yu was pleasantly surprised that Shun Miao could finally see Shen Yu's true face, but she did not understand the meaning of Shun Miao's words. When she raised her head to see her young lady's likable face, There was an inexplicable sense of awe that made one involuntarily look up. Shen Miao looked at her fingertips. Why did Shen Qing push her into the water? It was because she said one sentence at that time. Wait for father's triumphant return at the end of the year. I will let father make the decision and beg father to marry me to His Highness Prince Ding. She said it naively and felt that they were family, so she had no scruples. Shen Xian was a general in court, and it was not impossible for him to have the heart to marry off his daughter. Why did Shen Yu want to sow discord between her and Shan Qing? Naturally it was because Shen Yu also admired Prince Ding. In the last lifetime when she was at death's door, Shen Yu and Shan Qing then told her that both of them admired Fu Xiuyi for a long time. Now thinking about it, there were already some clues at this time. Since both of them sisters were infatuated with Fu Xiuyi, would it not be a pity to not let them fulfill their wishes in this lifetime? She would definitely let their wishes come true. The blood debt that the second and third household owed the Shen family in the previous lifetime would be repaid from now on. Chapter 6. In the early autumn, the northern wild geese lined up in a row and flew across the vast sky towards the warm southern country. The lush summer foliage in the courtyard began to wither and the colorful fishes in the pond looked colder than usual. The young female's black hair was combed into a deer bun with an exquisite coral hairpin. She was wearing a crimson silk double-nest cloud goose attire, outlining her slim and exquisite figure. Bai Lu gently draped the embroidered cloak over Shan Miao and said, "Young lady's illness has not recovered. Be careful not to catch a cold." Shan Miao shook her head. Her stature was still small and was not as tall as Shen Yu and Shan Qing. Her face was round and in addition to her usual timid character, she looked like she was younger than her actual age, just 11 or 12 years old. But today it was somewhat different. Shuangjiang was watching from the side and there was something strange in her heart. The young female's complexion was pale, and she looked at a small and delicate person. Now there was not a trace of a smile on her face and she was not cold nor silly. She was somewhat cold and seemed to be looking at the sky with some nostalgia. She was still standing like before, but there was some dignity, as if one did not know where she got her unique temperament overnight, and there was a sense of grace and grandeur. Shuangjiang shook her head as if this would be able to get rid of the absurd thoughts in her heart. She smiled as she looked at Shan Miao. "What is young lady looking at?" After having breakfast, Shan Miao kept standing in the courtyard looking at the sky in a daze. Just thinking that these wild geese fly from the northern lands to the southern country, would they also pass through the northwest desert? Shan Miao softly said. The northwest desert was the place that Shen Xian was guarding. Shen Foreign and eldest Shen Young Master were both there. In the letter that was sent last month, it was stated that the capital had just turned cold and the northwest region had already withered and snow had started to fall. Young lady must be thinking of Master and Furen. Shuangjiang smiled. Master will return at the end of the year, and would be very happy to see that young lady has grown taller. Shen Miao smiled, but there was some bitterness in her mouth. The great general that could only return to the Ding capital once a year, and the first thing he would do upon his return was to face his own daughter's shameless act of running to become a wife and even forcing her to marry with her own death. How happy could he be? Not to mention that the person she was thinking of marrying was a villain, who only wanted to use the Shen family's military power to fight for the throne. The fight for the heir apparent was a mess of crooks and dragons. The Shen family was not willing to get involved, but they were dragged into the water by her blind love, and finally ended up with a miserable ending where the whole family was destroyed. Shen Miao closed her eyes. However, too many things had happened in the short span of half a year. Ever since she turned 15, her marriage had become a weapon that the East Courtyard could use against her at any time. It seemed that starting from this year, the East Courtyard was like an evil beast that had taken off its disguise. Step by step it forced her into a dead end. She could not turn back. Girl. Bai Lu saw that little master's expression was strange and her fingers that were gripping the cloak turned white. She could not help but softly call out. Shen Miao recovered to her senses and saw Guyu jogging over. Young lady, Rong Jingtang's side came over to rush. Rong Jingtang was the place where old Shen Foreign stayed. Early in the morning, old Foreign sent the maid by her side to see Shan Miao. Seeing that Shen Miao was fine, she said that once her body recovered, she would be able to pay her respects to old Foreign. In fact, whether it was to pay respects or to denounce which one was not well aware. Shun Miao gently smiled and tightened her cloak. Let's go. In the Shun residence, the east and west courtyard were clearly separated. In the beginning, when old General Shun was still alive, he would often practice swordplay and boxing in an empty courtyard in the west courtyard. Afterwards, when old General Shun passed away, Shen Gui and Shan Wan took the path of civil officials, and only Shen Xian alone took over the old general's mantle. That empty courtyard along with the west courtyard was given to Shan Xian. The east courtyard was spacious and housed the first, second and old Shen foreign's 3 families. Chapter 7. In fact, compared to the east courtyard, the west courtyard's location was more remote. Even the amount of sunlight was less than half that of the east courtyard. There was really nothing worth praising about it. Only Shen Xian was cheerful all day, feeling that he had picked up a great bargain after obtaining that piece of empty land. Shen Xian and Shen Foreign were from a military family, and their vision was also simple. The white walls and black tiles were extremely simple. It could not compare to the exquisite and graceful renovation of the east courtyard. Shun Miao was very dissatisfied with the western courtyard that her family occupied and envied the elegance and cuteness of the eastern courtyard. Because of this, she blamed Shen Xian in her heart. But now it seemed that he was laughing at his own ignorance. Although his own courtyard was simple, it was not shabby. Every part of it displayed an open-minded state of mind. How could it be compared to the evil spirits of the east courtyard, which only had a golden exterior but a shabby interior? After walking through a long corridor and passing through an exquisitely manicured garden, he finally reached the entrance of Rongjing Tang. Rongjing Tang's decorations were extremely elegant, most likely in order to show the scholarly atmosphere. There was a plaque with Zhu Xian Yi's name hanging on the door, and the copper handle made of crane and pine trees was exquisite and nimble. "Fifth young lady is here," Shir, who was by old Shen Foreign's side, said. Shen Miao stepped into Rongjing Tang. Rongjing Tang was a joyous and harmonious scene. Almost everyone was present. The Shen family's second foreign Ran Wan Yun, and the Shen family's third foreign Chan Roqiu stood below old foreign. Shen Qing took a plate of snacks and sat beside old foreign, and on the other side sat the younger brother of the Shun family's second household. Shen Yuanbo was only 5 years old and randomly grabbed some snacks to stuff into old foreign's mouth, making old Shen foreign convulse with laughter. It seemed that no one noticed Shen Miao's appearance until Shen Yu smiled and said, "Why is fifth younger sister only here now?" Seventh younger brother had almost finished eating the sugar-steamed cheese. Shen Miao nodded her head. "Most likely my body is not fully recovered and felt dizzy after 2 steps. I rested for a while on the way, so I came late." The people in Rongjing Tang were all silent. If Shen Yu wanted to say that she came late, she would not be afraid to point out that old Shen Foreign took advantage of her seniority and did not care about her granddaughter's health to send someone over to pay respects. After a moment, Ran Wan Yun said with a smile, "I see that little Five's body is really weak. These few days the physician had been invited twice, but it is fortunate that he is fine now." "Are you feeling better?" A hoarse and stern voice rang out, carrying with it a trace of impatience. Shen Miao raised her head to look at old Shen Foreign. The smile on old Shen Foreign's face had disappeared, and she slightly raised her head with some arrogance. She was clearly 70 years of age, yet she was wearing a pink, thin and tightly buttoned dress. Her collar was inlaid with green jade buttons, and she was wearing a forehead cloth embroidered with white orchids. Her silver hair was coiled into a bun decorated with some jade beads. She was a female who was extremely particular about appearance. In the last lifetime, when Shen Miao was still in the boudoir, she had always felt that old Shen Foreign was the noblest female, and that kind of elegant and beautiful temperament in her later years made her unable to help but be fascinated. But now she felt that it was somewhat ridiculous. Old General Shan's first wife, Shen Xian's mother, was born in a prestigious family and was a true lady from a respectable family. It was a pity that she died of illness in her middle age. Later on, when old General Shan's army passed by a place, he saved a songstress from the hands of a local ruffian. The songstress had nowhere to go and begged to be his concubine. She gave birth to Shan Gui and Shan Wan for old General Shan, and was later promoted to the official position. The songstress made a name for herself and became Shen Foreign, and later became old Shen Foreign. Her reputation and status had changed, but deep down in her bones, she was a lowly person who came from the streets. Shen Miao still remembered that in the last lifetime, old Shen Foran forced her to marry the lame prince of Yuzhou, just to pave the way for Shen Qing. She looked at the female in front of her. When old Shen Foran was young, she was very beautiful with a sharp face and big and watery eyes. When she was old, it was like a dry triangular drum with 2 eyes protruding from it. But she was not resigned to her fate and insisted on applying bright-colored lipstick. It was really not dignified at all. Shen Miao had the eyesight of an empress in her previous lifetime as she casually evaluated in her heart and humbly said, "After drinking the medicine, it is much better," thanking grandmother for the concern. In the next second, one could hear old Shen Foran shouting from above, "Unfilial daughter. Still not kneeling down." Chapter 8. Unfilial daughter. Still not kneel down. Following old Shen Foran's words, Shen Miao did not move. Everyone looked at her with some surprise. Shen Exine was not in the residence all year round and Shen Miao was raised in front of old Shen Foran. Old Shen Foran treated her strictly and Shen Miao's character was raised to be weak and wooden, and had never refuted old Foran's orders. Today she actually did not kneel? Was it really that as long as it was related to Prince Ding she would give birth to great courage? Zumu, 5th mother, does not know what wrong she has done, Shen Miao said calmly. Could it be that 5th younger sister is confused from the fever? Shen Yu was the first to speak and there was some anxiety on her face. Zumu was only in a moment of anger and did not really want to punish you. Now that it is a proper matter to admit one's mistake, why are you still so stubborn? With one sentence, the crime of not changing one's mistakes and contradicting one's elders was pushed onto Shen Miao's head. Presumptuous. This is simply going against the heavens. Old Shen Foran was so angry that she sat up straight and her voice was somewhat sharp. Shen Yuanbo was eating the sugar steamed cheese in his mouth and was frightened by old Shen Foran, causing the snacks in his hands to drop to the ground and he immediately started crying. 7th son, do not cry. When Ren Wanyun saw her youngest son crying, she immediately took a few steps forward and held him in her arms. She looked at Shen Miao with eyes full of disapproval. 5th mother, are you crazy? Who taught you to contradict one's elders? Shen Miao looked at Ren Wanyun. 2nd foreign Ren Wanyun had a well-rounded figure, and was wearing a dark blue silk brocade robe. Her face was rosy and she was fair and plump. She looked kind and would usually have a smile on her face. With the power to manage the household in her hands, everyone in the Shen residence respected her for handling matters fairly, and was a well-deserved daughter-in-law. Shen Miao also thought so until later on when she was married. Shen Exine almost added more than half of his family's assets as dowry, but at the end when she arrived at the residence of Prince Ding, the dowry was very little. Why? Naturally it was because it was detained by Ren Wanyun. Ren Wanyun kept all the valuable things in the dowry, and the shop owner changed. Shen Exine was also not in the capital and she foolishly married into the residence of Prince Ding, but because of the dowry problem, she suffered the disdain of everyone in the residence. It was all thanks to this good aunt's fairness. 2nd aunt, do you also think that I did something wrong? Shen Miao said softly, but I don't know where I did wrong. Idiot. Old Shen Foran could not hold it in and immediately started scolding. You are so young and do not know shame. To peek at His Highness Prince Ding, you have thrown away our Shen residence's face. How dare you talk back to me? Who taught you the rules? You're so shameful. Shen Miao sighed in her heart. Old Shen Foran usually put on airs, but once she opened her mouth, it was no doubt the style of a singing female. Which old foreign of a noble family would curse like that? She was simply like a prostitute of all trades. In the past lifetime, Shen Miao did not feel it, but after becoming the Empress, she felt that speaking to old Shen Foran was lowering her status. Peeping at His Highness Prince Ding? She tilted her head and asked in confusion. Shen Yu could not help but say, 5th younger sister, even though one knows that you love Prince Ding, but to fall into the water because of peeking at Prince Ding, it is really damaging to the residence's face. Moreover, His Highness Prince Ding is definitely unhappy in his heart. 5th younger sister, you better find a chance to apologize to His Highness Prince Ding. Love Prince Ding, apologize to Prince Ding. Which female was willing to lose face in front of the man she loved? In the past lifetime, Shen Yu also said so, and old Shen Furen deeply agreed. Shen Miao felt embarrassed and refused to comply and was grounded by old Shen Furen in a fit of anger. One sentence was because she loved Prince Ding and did not know shame, ruined her own reputation and even implicated the residents. Shen Yu looked gentle and elegant, but her mind was so unfathomable that Shen Miao could not help but look at her. Chapter 9. Just as Shen Yu's voice landed, she saw Shen Miao looking at her. That pair of grape-like dark eyes were exceptionally clear and seemed to contain a special meaning, which made her surprised for a moment. In the next second, she heard Shen Miao's faint voice, "Second older sister, what admiring His Highness Prince Ding." These words cannot be spoken nonsense. Now fifth lady is a young lady of marriageable age, and to speak like this, one fear that it will ruin fifth lady's reputation. Shen Yu was stunned. Shen Miao's love for Prince Ding was known by the entire noble circle in the capital. Even though Shen Miao did not say it explicitly, her words and actions were not concealed, so why was she denying it now? She smiled. "Fifth younger sister, everyone here is one's own family. There is nothing wrong with these matters, second older sister." Just as she was speaking, Shen Miao suddenly interrupted her words loudly and sternly said, "Second older sister, speak cautiously. As the saying goes, disaster comes from the mouth. His Highness Prince Ding is a descendant of nobility, and as an aristocratic family, one must be cautious in words and actions. In the past it was fifth lady who was young and insensible, and one feared that she had done some things that would cause misunderstandings. But the matter yesterday was a lesson, and fifth lady will naturally restrain her words and actions. One hopes that second older sister will not say such things." With these words, not only Shen Yu but everyone in the room, including old Shen Furen, were all stunned. Shen Miao was usually gentle and timid and never spoke loudly before. She was obedient and easy to manipulate, so when had she ever spoken so harshly before? Chun Rochio's eyes flashed. Shen Yu was still young and was not as astute as her. Chun Rochio was born in a scholarly family, but she was not brainless. She was usually arrogant and was never willing to give in. Seeing that her daughter was at a disadvantage, she was unhappy and immediately said gently, "Whether Wu Nyang is in love or not, it can be said in one sentence. After all, who can guess a girl's mind?" But fifth lady still have to listen to third Shen Shan's words. "Your second older sister is right. His Highness Prince Ding's status is noble, and no matter what, one should go and apologize to him." Correct. Old Shen Furen also recovered to her senses and said, "Tomorrow one will go to the residence of Prince Ding to send an invitation and personally apologize." Shen Miao almost laughed out of anger. These words could only deceive the ignorant her in her previous lifetime. Now looking at it again, she was a daughter of a military family with a noble status. Why should she go to the prince's residence to apologize? As such, where would Shen Xian put his face? One was afraid that from tomorrow onwards, there would be another joke in the Ding capital. She could be considered to have understood that old Furen did not like Shen Xian, the first household, and could not wait for the first household to make a fool of themselves all day long. It would be best if they collapse early, and Shen Xian, Shen Furen was not in the Ding capital, so she was used as a raft. But how could there be such a good thing in the world? Shen Miao smiled faintly and her gaze fell on Chan Qing, who had been silent since the beginning. She said, "Big sister, when I fell into the water that day, only you were by my side." Shen Qing raised her head and nodded calmly. She had already thought that Shen Miao would definitely say that she pushed her into the water, but Shen Qing was not afraid at all. Now old Furen and Ren Wan Yun were the ones making the decisions in the Shen family. Shen Miao only had the title of a young lady on the surface, but in reality she was just a daughter of the third household. As long as one insisted that there was no such thing, old Furen and Ren Wan Yun would side with her. At that time when Shen Miao lied, old Furen would despise her and even punish her severely. "Serves you right. Who asked a vulgar and ignorant daughter to want to snatch Prince Ding from her? Why did she not drown to death that day? Big sister, did you also see His Highness Prince Ding that day?" But Shen Miao's question was not about this. "Saw," Chun Qing answered. "That is it. The day before yesterday, it was obviously me and big sister playing by the pond and accidentally fell into the water. Coincidentally, His Highness Prince Ding, who was passing by the Shun residence and came in to ask Second Shu for a painting. Shun Miao shook her head. If I went to peek at His Highness Prince Ding, where would I get the news from? There is no reason for Second Shu's and Third Shu's servants to pass the message to the inner courtyard. How would I know that His Highness Prince Ding would suddenly come to the Shun residence to ask Second Shu for a painting? Or, she spoke unhurriedly, could it be that His Highness Prince Ding sent an invitation to our residence? Chun Qing did not understand the meaning of Shun Miao's words and was about to refute with a frown when she heard her mother Ran Wanyun suddenly shout, "Eldest sister." There was an unconcealable panic in her voice. Shun Miao swept a glance at the pale Ren Wanyun and the suddenly nervous Chan Roqiu and smiled slightly. As she said, there were so many astute people in the residence, so how could they not hear it? Fu Xiui came to the Shun residence the day before yesterday, and when he passed by the Shun residence, he remembered the chess bet with Shan Gui and went to look for Shan Gui to ask for a painting. Now Shun Miao said that an invitation was sent in advance. Nowadays the emperor hated officials and princes to be too close, so if an invitation was specially sent, what was the purpose of the invitation? The future plan of the crown prince? There were thousands of eyes and ears in the world, and who knew if there would be spies from the Tian family in the Shun residence? There were some things that could not be said. Shun Miao's one sentence had raised a female's conduct to a subject's loyalty. Shun Xian was in the northwest region, so naturally there was no problem, but Shun Gui and Shun Wan were still in the Shun residence, and these two people were still serving in the court. Shun Yu and Shun Qing did not understand this logic, but Ren Wanyun and Chan Roqiu definitely understood. Shun Miao sneered in her heart. They wanted to trample on her reputation, so she would use Shun Gui's and Shun Wan's heads to gamble. She did not know if her second and third Shun understood, willing to, dare to. Chapter 10. Shun Qing looked at her mother in confusion. Although she was unwilling, she still obediently kept her mouth shut. Even though Shan Yu did not understand what was wrong with Shun Miao's words, but when she saw Chan Roqiu's nervous expression, she realized something and obediently stood at the same spot and no longer spoke. Old Shun Foreign frowned. Even though she had followed old General Shun for so many years, she did not understand the twists and turns of the officialdom, and her eyes were limited to the four corners of the courtyard. So how would she be able to hear the meaning of Shun Miao's words? She only felt that Shun Miao had taken the wrong medicine today, and had repeatedly contradicted her, and had already offended her dignity as the head of the family. She was about to explode in anger. Little Five's words are not wrong. Ran Wanyun smiled and interrupted old Shin Foreign's reprimand. It was originally a misunderstanding, so how could the matters of the front hall spread to the inner courtyard? It was just a coincidence that they ran into each other. His Highness Prince Ding was broad-minded and would not put a child's play in his eyes. Everything is a misunderstanding. Poor Xiaowu. She fell into the water and suffered a shock. She really feels wronged. Old Shun Foreign opened her mouth and was somewhat dissatisfied with second daughter-in-law suddenly interrupting her. But Ran Wanyun's maiden family was a famous merchant family in Mingqi, and most of the expenses were subsidized by this second daughter-in-law. Even though she was dissatisfied, she was not willing to offend her. He snorted coldly and didn't continue. Chen Roqiu also realized something and quickly followed Ran Wanyun's words. That's right. Where, Qing'er, in the future do not mention the words just now. It was little Five who accidentally fell into the water and coincidentally was seen by His Highness Prince Ding. How can there not be coincidences in this world? She smiled as she looked at Shun Miao. Little Five, old Foreign is also feeling sorry for you and is not really angry with you. Shun Miao looked at the woman in front of her. Shun Yu looked like Chan Roqiu, and her temperament was also similar. Chan Roqiu was also born in a scholarly family, and her brows were graceful and beautiful. Usually when she walked or spoke, she would be gentle, beautiful but not frivolous. Such a woman with a strong scholarly aura seemed to be easy to get along with. Who knew what would happen next later on? When the Xiongnu emissary requested for a marriage alliance, there was only one princess of suitable age in the palace, and that was Wan Yu. Chan Roqiu said that Shun Yu was already old and marriage was the final destination, so she was willing to marry the Xiongnu. However, Shun Yu was not a princess, so Fu Xiui conferred the title of Princess Yuru to Shan Yu. But in the end, the one who got married was her Wan Yu. Wan Yu died on the way to the wedding, so Wan Yu's princess palace was given to Princess Yuru. Princess Yuru naturally accepted Wan Yu's everything. Her Wan Yu was not even 16 years old. Shen Miao closed her eyes. If one were to say that Chan Roqiu had no credit for this, one feared that Chan Roqiu herself would not believe it. One feared that Chan Roqiu and Mei Furan had already reached an agreement and wanted to see her, thinking that there was hope, but her own hope would be shattered alive. Chan Roqiu's smile stiffened. The girl on the other side looked at her. She had a round face, round eyes, and a round nose. This kind of appearance coupled with a timid expression easily gave people the impression that she was stupid. But now it wasn't. One did not know when the timid expression disappeared, and what replaced it was a solemn look. It was not a sudden tense seriousness, but it was from the heart, and there was a faint sense of distance. For a moment, Chan Roqiu suddenly felt that the person in front of her was not that stupid daughter of the first household, but a mistress with a high position. That kind of sharpness at one side suddenly made one tremble. In the next second, one saw the young female's eyes curved. I understand. Now third Shinshin also feel that little five is not wrong. Chapter 11. Chan Roqiu was surprised for a moment and looked at the obviously unhappy old foreign on the high seat before reluctantly saying, even so, little five falling into the pond is really too careless. How do the few maids around take care of others? Eldest brother and eldest saw are not around, so the servants bully the master? From Zhengsheng's point of view, it is better to change these few maids. Ren Wanyun laughed out loud. Chan Roqiu looked at her with some anger, and Ren Wanyun's lips hung a trace of a sneer. This Dime of hers looked like she was educated and reasonable, but her heart was very shrewd. Most likely she wanted to change the people around Shen Miao. Now Shen Yu had reached the age where she should pay attention to others. In the capital, no matter how far Shen Miao's stupid and cowardly reputation was, in terms of status, Shen Yu was not as good as Shen Miao. After all, Shen Xian still held the military power in his hands. The third household was finally ready to make a move. Shen Miao lowered her head. Why does third Shen want to change Gu Yu and the rest? They are the people that father and mother left for fifth lady. Now there are many changes in the western courtyard, and fifth lady does not know any of the second-ranked maids. If Gu Yu and the rest are changed, fifth lady would not know who to talk to in the western courtyard. Ren Wanyun's smile stopped abruptly. In the western courtyard, Shen Xian and wife were not in the capital all year round, and the maids and manservants in the courtyard were almost all changed. There were old foreign's people, second household's people, and third household's people. But because it was the second household that managed the household, naturally there were more people in the second household. It was all right if these words were not said, but if it were to be passed to the ears of outsiders, that the daughter of the first household did not know a single servant in her own courtyard, what kind of good intentions would the second and third household have? There was no reason for a sister-in-law to intervene in the eldest brother's courtyard. Her mind turned very quickly, and she smiled as she stared at Chan Roqiu and said to Shan Miao, your third Shen is joking with you. Gu Yu and the rest of the maids are just careless. Our Shen family is benevolent and would not do such inhumane things. Little five need not be anxious. At the end, her words still choked Chan Roqiu. Shen Yuanbo looked at his mother, and then at Chan Roqiu before yawning. Old Shen Foreign was somewhat impatient with the battle of words between her second and third daughter-in-law, and seeing this scene she said, done, it is just some trivial matters. Number two's family. Bring seventh son over and disperse. There are so many people, it's making me dizzy. Ren Wanyun quickly carried Shen Yuanbo to old Shen Foreign's couch and said, Mother, then this daughter-in-law will leave first. Seventh brother, be obedient when you play with old madam. Chan Roqiu glanced at Shen Yuanbo before placing her hands on her lower abdomen, and slowly walked out of Rongjing Tang. The second household had a son and was highly regarded by old Shen Furen. No matter how capable she was, Shen Yu was after all a daughter. It would be good if there was a son. In the Shen residence, sooner or later the things of the first household would have to be fought over. If there was a son, at least they would be able to share equally, unlike now where the second household had benefited for no reason. Moreover, the first household still had a D son. Even though he was at the border with Shen Xian, who knew if he would come back to take a share of the loot. Thinking about it, Chan Rochio raised her head and her gaze landed on the few people who were heading towards the western courtyard. The young female was wearing a crimson embroidered long robe. She had always loved to wear bright colors, and in addition to not having parents by her side, she did not know how to dress up and would always reveal a rustic feeling. But now the crimson color made her complexion look even fairer. It was still the same appearance, but it seemed to be more solemn, even somewhat dignified. Guyu softly said, "Young lady's body is not well, why the rush to Guangwenguan? Since the illness has been explained, there is no need to rush to Guangwenguan. Or, no." Shen Miao interrupted her words. "Prepare the carriage immediately." It was obvious that there were no harsh words, but one did not know why Guyu shuddered and did not dare to ask any more. Chapter 12. Guangwen Hall was the school of the Ding capital. The high-ranking officials and noble people of Mingqi would often send their brothers and young ladies to Guangwenguan. The teachers in Guangwenguan were all famous scholars or scholars of the four households. The young noble children all felt proud to be able to enter Guangwen Library. Shen Miao also studied in Guangwenguan. It was a pity that Shen Xian and Shen Foren were from a military family, and the eldest brother Shen Qiu was someone who would have a headache whenever he met with studying. Shen Miao was raised by old Shen Foren's side since young, and old Shen Foren was a songstress and did not know a single word. Shen Miao's enlightenment was taught by third Shen Foren Chan Rochio. Chan Rochio came from a scholarly family, but at the beginning she taught Shen Miao obscure textbooks. Children had a playful heart, and after teaching, Shen Miao completely hated reading and writing. Chan Rochio saw that Shen Miao did not like to study and did not force her. She taught her to pay attention to food and clothing and lived the life of a pampered young lady. Afterwards, when she reached the age and went to Guangwenguan, Shen Miao could not keep up with the teacher's knowledge and was even worse than the grade 1 students. Later on, she was at the bottom. In the end, Shen Miao did not like to study and became famous in the Ding capital for being ignorant and stupid. Among the 3D young ladies of the Shen family, Shen Yu was the most famous. She was proficient in the 4 arts of zither, chess, calligraphy, and painting. Even though Shen Qing was not as outstanding as Shen Yu, she still did a good job. Especially her embroidery skills were good, and she was also one of the best in mathematics. As a person who would marry into a family in the future and become the mistress of the family, the better her calculations were, the more she would be able to win the favor of her husband's family. Therefore, Shen Qing was able to obtain a reputation as a capable person. The more outstanding Shen Yu and Shen Qing were, the more Shen Miao appeared to be useless. She was even inferior to Shen Dongling, the daughter of the first branch. In the carriage, Jingzhe asked, "Young lady, why not travel with eldest young lady and second young lady?" On normal days, Shen Miao would always ride in the same carriage with Shen Qing, and Shen Yu as Shen Miao felt that it gave her courage to have her sisters accompanying her. As for Shen Yu and Shen Qing, it was most likely because they had a stupid younger sister to set them off, so they would naturally be more outstanding. But now, Shen Miao did not even want to feign civility. "We don't live under the same roof to begin with, and the paths we take are completely different. How can we be in the same boat?" Jingzhe stuck out her tongue and did not know why. She couldn't understand what her young lady was saying, but she felt that this was good. Shen Miao's temperament had always been too cowardly, and everything was controlled by the second and third household. Now that she had fallen into the water once, it seemed that she had her own ideas. This was how it should be. As the legitimate daughter of the first household, in terms of status, she would be lower than anyone else. How could she be like a maid? In another carriage, Shen Yu lifted the curtain and peeked behind before softly saying, "Eldest sister, fifth younger sister is following behind. She's deliberately throwing a tantrum." Shen Qing coldly snorted. In front of Shen Yu, she had never concealed her contempt for Shen Miao. "Let her be, anyway the one who will lose face in the end will not be me," Shen Yu said worriedly, but she had already caught a cold and moreover the matter with His Highness Prince Ding. "Shen Yu?" Shen Qing said, "How can I not know what you are thinking in your heart? Stop pretending to be a good person. If you really care about her, you can go sit in her carriage. There's no need to talk to me." Shen Yu bit her lips and lowered her head and did not speak anymore. After the carriage traveled for half an hour, they finally arrived at Guangwentang. The time was still early and the teachers had not started their lessons. Most of the second-level students had arrived and were sitting in the study hall talking. Shen Yu and Shen Qing had just arrived when there were female students warmly greeting them. In Guangwen Tang, Shen Yu was ranked first among the females. She was born beautiful and had a humble and gentle temperament, so naturally she was sought after by everyone. Even though Shen Qing was not as outstanding as Shen Yu, she was capable and smooth in handling matters, thus the circle of noble females liked her very much. A pink-clad young female said, "Yunyang, why do I not see Shen Miao today?" Normally Shen Miao would follow beside Shen Yu and Shan Qing like a maid, so it was somewhat strange to not see her today. Afraid that she does not have the face to come. The young female who said this had a charming appearance, but her voice was a little loud and her face had a mocking expression. Heard that she fell into the water after peeping at His Highness Prince Ding. Is it that she has not recovered from her cold, or that she does not have the face to see others? Pei-Lan, it is not like that. Shen Yu shook her head. You are just too protective of your younger sister. Pei-Lan said, that kind of stupid person is not like a young lady from your Shen family, yet you still protect her all the time. But she really opened one's eyes. Usually she looks timid and soft, but when she meets His Highness Prince Ding, she is so brave. If one did not know, one would think that she is a young lady from a small family with no upbringing. These words were somewhat heavy. When Shen Qing heard it, she smiled. Fifth younger sister is only temporarily mischievous. I think it is because General Shen and Shen Foreign are not by her side to teach her. Another young female with a fallen horse bun said, due to lack of discipline, naturally she does not even know the etiquette and shame that a young lady should know. Kai Xian's words are not right. Shen Yu softly said, even though eldest Bofu and eldest Bofu are not in the Ding capital, but fifth younger sister was raised by Zuma's side. My mother and second Shen also taught her from time to time, and did not neglect discipline. The unspoken meaning was that it was Shen Miao who was born without shame. Sure enough, when Shen Yu's words came out, Pei-Lan said, it is really strange. You are all brought up by the same family. Yunyang Qingyang, you and Shen Miao are worlds apart. This is probably what teacher said. Mud cannot hold up a wall. As she spoke, she started giggling. There was already a circle of noble females around and they all started laughing. Even some of the youths could not help but cast sidelong glances. In the next moment, one heard someone shouting, look, Shen Miao is here. Everyone looked towards the door with the mood of watching a good show. One saw a young female slowly walking in from the door, wearing a deep red silk embroidered robe with a dark blue embroidered cloak draped over her head. This kind of color was too mature for a female, especially for Shen Miao who was round and soft. If one was not careful, one would look like a child who stole an elder's clothes. Her footsteps were very slow and the hem of her skirt did not move at all. Even though each step was light, it was very heavy. One did not know why, but one felt a sense of grace and grandeur. Her chin was slightly raised and there were no waves between her brows. That puppy-like eyes had become a bottomless pool and all the power was contained within, as if she was a ferocious beast that had kept its claws and fangs. Her facial features were still pleasing, and because of her round and soft appearance, one could not find a trace of stupidity. Because she had not grown up yet, with a dignified bearing, it was unexpectedly not out of place. She was not like a young female but more like those noble furins in high positions, or perhaps the decisive appearance of a father who was the head of the household. The hall gradually quietened down. Chapter 13. What was Shen Miao like? If one were to ask the students in Guangwen School, no matter if it was grade 1, grade 2 or grade 3, they would all know. There was no other reason. She was stupid, cowardly, but she still had to put on a virtuous appearance. Her appearance was not special and her temperament was not outstanding. She had no talent and was also a love-struck fool. Everyone in the Ding capital knew that she was infatuated with Prince Ding. So if one were to say who was the most outstanding female in Guangwen School, it would naturally be Shen Yu. If one were to say who was the most despicable female, it would naturally be Shen Miao. They were both daughters of the Shen family, but their image was completely different. Everyone was used to the maidservant Shen Miao beside Shen Yu. And when one day Shen Miao became not like Shen Miao, everyone was not used to it. Pei-Lan pushed Shen Yu. Yunyang, could it be that your younger sister is confused from her illness? Why is she like a different person today? Shen Yu looked at Shan Miao and her heart was somewhat puzzled. It seemed that after waking up from falling into the water, Shen Miao's temperament had changed a lot. Could it be that the matter with Prince Ding was too big of a blow? Just as she wanted to speak, her good friend Zhang Kaixian opened her mouth. Shen Miao, I heard that you fell into the water. Why? Is your cold better now? These words were said so openly and it was really embarrassing. If it was the usual Shen Miao, she would not know what to do and look at Shen Yu and ask Shen Yu to speak up for her. But today she only glanced at Zhang Kaixian and lightly said, all right. Many thanks for the concern. Zhang Kaixian was surprised and everyone in the school was surprised. Perhaps it was because she did not expect that Shan Miao would be so lukewarm towards herself that Zhang Kaixian felt that Shan Miao's attitude was extremely irksome and immediately said, since your cold is better, the first thing to do is not to apologize to His Highness Prince Ding but to come to the school. Don't you feel that the cart is being put before the horse? Shen Miao took a deep breath. The surrounding students, no matter if they were youths or young ladies, did not have the intention to speak up for her. She was originally a person who did not have any friends, and seeing Shan Miao make a fool of herself was probably the only pleasure of these aristocratic children in the school. Sweeping a glance at everyone who had different expressions, and then looking at Shan Qing's gloating eyes, Shan Miao was about to speak when she heard Shen Yu say, His Highness Prince Ding is open-minded and would not blame fifth younger sister for such a small matter. For fifth younger sister to come to the academy, it is naturally because she is thirsty for knowledge and this is a good thing. What is it? The youth on the other side could not help but laugh. He had secretly admired Shen Yu for a long time and usually looked down on Shan Miao. He felt that it was Shen Yu's tragedy to have such a younger sister like Shan Miao. He said, thirsty for knowledge. Shen Yu, if you want to help this younger sister, you do not need to use such words. Thirsty for knowledge. For a person who does not even know how to read the first national teacher's text, to say thirsty for knowledge is too ridiculous. Moreover, he looked at Shan Miao maliciously and continued, who knows if she deliberately fell into the water? Isn't it always like that in the dramas? Falling into the water, the hero rescues the beauty and dedicates his life to the hero. But one must have guessed the ending wrongly. After saying that, he probably felt that it was interesting and laughed out loud. He was the leader of this group of youths, and as soon as he spoke, the surrounding youths also roared with laughter. The noble ladies around Shen Yu also felt that it was funny and for a moment, ridiculing laughter surrounded Shan Miao and the gazes that landed on her were full of malice. Words were the most hurtful weapon and in the previous lifetime, it was unknown how many times this kind of situation had happened. She was used to being despised, insulted and ridiculed, and was even more unwilling to take the initiative to break these inherent concepts. Finally, Shen Yu and Shen Qing were on good terms with these noble sons and daughters, and she was getting further and further away from this circle. She once thought that this was the biggest misfortune, but compared to the tragedies in her previous lifetime, what did these count as? These youths and young ladies were not even as old as her Wan Yu and Fu Ming, but because of instigation, they were like water and fire. Should these people really be her enemies? Naturally not. These noble sons and daughters were either rich or noble, and there was no lack of aristocratic families. What kind of ending did these aristocratic families have in the previous lifetime? They were all eliminated by the late emperor and Fu Xiuyi. For example, the person who was ridiculing her was Shen Yu's admirer, the eldest young master of the Kai family, Kai Lin. A few years later, the Kai family was involved in a corruption case and their properties were confiscated and Kai Lin was also sent to the army. It was a pity that he had admired Shen Yu for so many years, but at the end Shen Yu could not wait to draw a line with him. She did not have a hostile relationship with these youths and some of them even stood on the same side. It was just that these aristocratic families were on the opposite side because of the deliberate checks and balances of the emperor. The relationship between them was not close and there was even some hatred. There was no need to turn allies into enemies. In the previous lifetime when she was an empress, Shen Miao had learned a lot of things. One must not make enemies because of a moment of impulse as it was not worthwhile. Kai Lin, how can you say that about fifth younger sister? When everyone had enough laughing, Shen Yu suddenly spoke, fifth younger sister is not that kind of person. Kai Lin. Shen Miao interrupted Shen Yu's words and her tone was flat without any ups and downs. Who told you that I fell into the water because I was in love with His Highness Prince Ding? To say it out loud, it should have made others feel contempt, but when Shen Miao said it, she was very calm and her tone was very indifferent, which made everyone surprised for a moment. Kai Lin was the little overlord here, and on normal days when Shen Miao saw him, she did not dare to speak much, so when did she use such a questioning tone? Furthermore, there was a hint of a commanding tone in his voice. Kai Lin did not know why, but he did not scold out loud and instead said, "Is it not so? So it is like this," Shen Miao said to herself and suddenly smiled as she looked at Shen Yu and Shan Qing. Eldest older sister, second older sister. It is fine if others do not know, but do you also not know? Why did you not defend for your younger sister? Shen Yu and Shan Qing were startled at the same time as they suddenly remembered their mother's exhortations before they left that they must not say anything wrong about Shen Miao falling into the water. Shen Qing was after all more concerned about the overall situation than Shen Yu and immediately said, "Yes. You all must not speak nonsense. At that time I was with fifth younger sister and I saw it with my own eyes that fifth younger sister accidentally slipped into the water and coincidentally His Highness Prince Ding arrived at that time. It has nothing to do with love." Shen Qing said it with such certainty that even though everyone did not believe it, they were not as serious as before. But they saw Shen Miao opening her mouth to say, "One would not speak nonsense if one did not see it with one's own eyes." Guangwentang not only teach one's studies but also one's moral character. Moreover, the words of love are beautiful words, so why was it said in such an unbearable manner? If I, Shen Miao, love a person, I must love with dignity. His Highness Prince Ding is a descendant of the heavens. How can I have such thoughts? Everyone is wrong. In this world, it was very difficult to change one's impression all at once. Moreover, everyone knew that she was infatuated with Fu Xiaoyi, so if she said now that she did not love him, one feared that no one would believe it. But no matter what, one must draw a clear line. Before the words were finished, one heard a voice of admiration. What a good love with dignity. Chapter 14. A young man walked in from outside. He looked to be in his early 20s and wore a green robe. His facial features were upright, but his figure was slightly scholarly. He looked like a magnanimous gentleman. He walked in and praised, "You're right. There's dignity in the heart of love, and it's not meant to be a mockery." Even though Guangwentang teaches homework, one's morals need to be trained diligently. All the students fell silent. Shen Miao stared at the youth. Pei Lang, Guangwentang's calligraphy teacher, had both ability and integrity, and was the only scholar in Guangwentang who was able to enter the hall to teach even though he was only a scholar. Elementary scholar Pei was gentle and patient. Compared to the other strict teachers, he deserved more respect from the students. Even for someone like Shen Miao who would often drop to the end of the book, Pei Xiukai had never scolded her, and would patiently explain it over and over again. If that was the case, this person was indeed a good teacher. His character and talent were 1 in a million, but unfortunately, Shen Miao knew of his other identity. He was the advisor that Fu Xiaoyi relied on the most. After Fu Xiaoyi ascended to the throne, he conferred him the title of state tutor. State preceptor Pei Lang was flushed with success. He was only below one person and above tens of thousands. As the imperial preceptor, he had indeed done a good job. Shen Miao thought that Pei Lang was an intelligent and upright person, but at the end when the crown prince was deposed, he did not say anything. Shen Miao and Pei Lang's personal relationship was considered not bad. Initially, the suggestion of Shen Miao going to the Qing country as a hostage was raised by Pei Lang. Pei Lang said, "This is all for the sake of Mingqi's rivers and mountains. If your ladyship's trip is able to solve His Majesty's urgent needs, in the future the rivers and mountains will be covered by your ladyship's good fortune and everyone in the world will be grateful to your ladyship's kindness." But in fact, when she returned to the palace 5 years later, there was an addition of Mei Furen in the inner palace, and these subordinates of Pei Lang who used to respect her started to be on guard against her. When the crown prince was deposed, Shen Miao even knelt down and begged Pei Lang because Pei Lang was Fu Xiaoyi's trusted aide. As long as Pei Lang opened his mouth, Fu Xiaoyi would definitely listen to his opinion. However, Pei Lang helped her up and said to her, "Your Highness, this subject is powerless to change what His Majesty has decided. Pei Lang, are you going to watch as the crown prince is deposed? You clearly know that you can't depose the crown prince." She was extremely angry as she questioned him. This is already inevitable. Empress, accept your fate. Pei Lang sighed. Accept your fate. How could people resign themselves to fate? If he were to be reborn and still have to accept his fate, wouldn't that be too lamentable and hateful? Shen Miao stared at the youth in front of her. He was open and aboveboard. He did not help when someone was in danger. He had a gentle temperament, and he was also cold and ruthless. As a subject, everything was for the sake of the empire. Pei Lang was a loyal subject, but, as long as he stood on Fu Xiuyi's side, he was destined to fight with her till death. At this time, Fu Xiuyi should not have subdued Pei Xiukai yet, so should he cut off the possibility of pulling Pei Xiukai to his side? It was better to be straightforward. Kill him in the cradle first. Pei Xiukai put down the scroll in his hands and was acutely aware that there was a pair of eyes staring at him. He raised his head and met Shen Miao's gaze. Shen Miao's seat was slightly further back, but even so, she still stubbornly and properly looked at him. This kind of feeling was somewhat strange. Pei Xiukai felt that this gaze contained a kind of scrutiny and judgment, as if weighing the pros and cons and judging something. Extending a little further, it was a kind of looking down with a kind of fastidious attitude. His actions paused as he wanted to see clearly what Shen Miao's expression was, but he saw the young female pick up the brush on the table and lower her head. Pei Lang smiled in his heart and shook his head. How could a young lady have that kind of condescending expression? As for judging and scrutinizing, that was even more impossible. Shen Miao was the most stupid and timid person in the entire Guangwentang. Chapter 15. He tidied up his things and started today's lesson. All the second-year students were somewhat drowsy. Calculation lessons were easy to make people feel bored, and no matter how wonderful Pei Xiukai's teaching was, they were all 14 or 15-year-old youths, and it was the age where they were jumping around, so how would they be able to listen? In addition, it was a good autumn day and everyone was dozing off. If it was other teachers, they would have started to reprimand them, but Pei Lang was the most gentle person and never punished students. Thus in his class everyone was the most daring. Other than Shan Qing, who was always first in calculation, listening attentively, the rest of the people were bored to death doing their own things. But today Shen Miao was different. She stared at Pei Xiukai without blinking and sat upright, as if she was listening very seriously. This was truly inconceivable. Since she hated studying the most, she was even less interested in mathematical calculations. It was already a miracle that she did not fall asleep, but she was actually listening attentively in class. Sitting at the same table with Shen Miao was a beautiful young female wearing a chrysanthemum-embroidered dress. Her expression was somewhat arrogant, and when she saw Shen Miao like this, she could not help but reveal a surprised look and cast sidelong glances at Shen Miao, who was listening attentively in class. How could Shen Miao care so much? In her previous lifetime she was not interested in calculation, but after she became the Empress, the foundation was not stable and the life in the inner palace had to be carefully calculated. As the Empress, she also had to reduce her expenses, and after she personally did it, she felt that calculation was not that difficult. In the inner palace, there were things as big as etiquette expenses and as small as the cups and snacks for the concubines. There were many and complicated accounts, and all of them had been looked through. What were these books counted as? She just wanted to work harder to see clearly what kind of person Pei Xiukai was. Only by doing so, she would know what kind of method was more suitable for this person. Her focused expression was already very unusual in the eyes of the young female beside her. After the calculation lesson ended and Pei Xiukai left, Shen Miao then retracted her gaze. The young female beside her pushed her and said with a tone of surprise, "Shen Miao, are you possessed?" "Why do you say so?" Shen Miao asked. The young female in front was the daughter of the Guanglu family, Feng and Ning. The Feng family was originally a noble court official in the capital, and Feng and Ning had an arrogant temperament since young. But in her previous life, Master Feng chose the wrong side. After the new emperor ascended the throne and was dismissed, the Feng family could only marry her to a distant cousin in order to protect this daughter. After the Feng family was defeated, Feng and Ning did not have a good ending after marrying. That Biao older brother also had a golden exterior but was rotten inside. Feng and Ning married into the family for less than a year and already had a son, but still scolded her as a burden left behind by the Feng family. Feng and Ning did not have a temper and immediately picked up a scissors and perished together with the mistress. Feng Ning's everything in her mind in the past. Looking at the arrogant young girl in front of him, how could he have imagined the ending of her decline? When Shen Miao looked at the youths and young females in Guangwentang now, it was like she was looking at Fu Ming and Wan Yu's big children, thus it was difficult to feel angry. Other than Shun and Shun up, but they were spoiled. And these pampered youths and young females would experience the cruelty of fate in the next 10 years. Seeing that she did not speak, Feng Ning was somewhat dissatisfied. Are you deliberately ignoring me? Shen Miao, could it be that you are working so hard today for the academy examinations 1 month later? I heard from your older sister that you want to take advantage of the academy examinations to show off and let Prince Ding others see you. She was after all a child, and after listening to Pei Xiukai's words, she did not say that she adored Prince Ding. Academy examinations? Shen Miao raised her eyebrows. Chapter 16. The Academy examinations of Guangwentang was set in the 10th month of every year. The Academy examinations was a test for every student in the school, and the especially outstanding students would be able to enter the talent exhibition. The most important thing was that there would be many scholars and ministers watching, and even the princes would be watching at the side. If there were good students, perhaps one would be able to enter an official career. In short, to show one's talents to others, no matter what, it would be a matter of being in the limelight. Thus, during the academy examinations every year, everyone would do their best to get a name. In the second level, Shen Yu's talents were the most flourishing, and she would be able to outshine others in the academy examinations every year. Even though Shen Qing was not as accomplished as Shen Yu in poetry, her calculations were among the best, and she would be able to get a ranking in this category. If one were to say that she did not achieve anything, then the one at the bottom would be Shen Miao. She did not know the 4 arts, and she did not know anything about calculations or strategy. Every time she made a fool of herself during the academy examinations, not to mention the talent exhibition, it was difficult to even pass the test. In the previous lifetime, Shen Miao was most afraid of the academy examinations every year. It was just that when she saw Shen Yu and Shen Qing being proud of themselves on stage, her heart was envious. Now looking at it again, she felt that it was just the jealousy between children. She had seen all kinds of battles and really did not put the academy examinations in her eyes. She looked at Feng Ning and said, "Academy examinations? I have never thought of fighting for a ranking. What is there to fight for being at the bottom?" Feng Ning was slightly surprised. She did not think that Shen Miao would be so magnanimous as to say the truth. She carefully sized up Shen Miao and asked, "Could it be that you were really hurt that your temperament changed so much?" It was as if Shen Miao had changed into a different person overnight. She was plain magnanimous and had a kind of calmness that was not something that someone of her age should have. Because they were sitting at the same table, this kind of change in temperament was even more obvious. Yes. Shen Miao smiled and did not say anything more. Perhaps it was because the youths of this age would instinctively feel respect or envy towards those who were more mature than them. Shen Miao's attitude actually made Feng Ning's attitude towards her better. After the calculations were done, the students went to the garden outside of Guangwentang to rest and play. The girls were playing chess or discussing their newly written poems in the classroom when they heard the sound of a startled horse outside. "What's that sound?" Yi Peilan turned her head. "Let's go outside and take a look," Jiang Kaixian suggested and pulled Shen Yu up. "Let's go and see what the matter is." Shen Miao had no intention to join in the fun, but it was Feng Ning who turned back after taking 2 steps and thought for a moment before grabbing Shen Miao's hands. "Let's go and watch together." Shen Miao was somewhat surprised. Feng Ning had always looked down on her, not to mention such intimate actions. She was still scratching her head but was already dragged out of the classroom by Feng Ning. Outside, there were already many students gathered at the entrance after hearing the commotion. But when they saw Feng Ning pulling Shen Miao over, they cast a surprised look over. Shen Yu's eyes flashed slightly, but she did not make a sound. It was Shen Qing who snorted coldly when she saw this. Ever since she knew that Shen Miao was also in love with Prince Ding, she did not even bother to pretend to be polite on the surface. But that was not what was surprising. Kai Lin had just squeezed out from the crowd when he saw the person outside. He cried out in surprise, "Thank you, young Marquis." "Young Marquis, yeah?" Shen Miao looked out. Outside the vermilion door of Guangwentang, there was a date-red steed. The horse's fur was smooth in one look, and one could tell that it was a precious horse that was hard to find. The horse proudly kicked its front hooves, and its elegant figure attracted everyone's attention. But after all, it was not as dazzling as the person on the horse. The youth sat on the horse's back and was wearing a black cloud-embroidered robe with a dark purple mink cloak. His right hand was lazily playing with the horse whip in his hand. He had sharp eyebrows and extremely handsome facial features. The corner of his mouth was slightly hooked up, and there was a smile, yet not a smile, in his eyes, but it was very cold. There was a young lady in the crowd who blushed and did not care where they were, and boldly folded the handkerchief into a silk flower and threw it towards the youth's arms. Ming-Chi had always been open-minded, especially towards the rules of the youths. They were very tolerant. The silk flower fell into the youth's arms, and the youth stretched out his hand to take it, and his lips hooked up into a smile. The young lady who threw the silk flower immediately touched her chest, and her face was flushed red, as if she was infatuated. In the next moment, the youth's mischievous smile disappeared in a flash. The silk flower fluttered and fell to the ground and landed under the red horse's hooves, where it was crushed into a ball. He lazily sat up straight. He was born with a strong sense of aggression, but because of his handsome face, that attractiveness was magnified incisively and vividly. He was born with an existence that one could not move away from. Really a cold and vile person. Yi Peilon muttered. It is the little marquis of the Xie family. Xun Miao raised her eyebrows. The little marquis of the Xie family, Xie Jingxing. The current aristocratic families of Ming-Chi were more or less meritorious since the founding of the country, when they accompanied the late emperor to conquer the country. After passing through generation after generation, some aristocratic families were only left with the name and were empty inside. Some aristocratic families were more prosperous and had a bright and beautiful life. There were civil officials like the Feng family, and also military officials like the Shen family. If one were to say that the Shen family was a military family for several generations, they had honestly led the troops to war and were recognized as honest people. Then the Xie family, even though they had a large military force in their hands, they were all muddle-headed people inside and out. The current emperor was also helpless against the Xie family. Most likely there were a few rebellious bones in the Xie family's bones. The things that they did were all shameful things. For example, ignoring the orders from the capital that was thousands of miles away to retreat, and insisted on pursuing the victorious attack. At the end, they even glorified it by saying, when the general is outside, the military orders can be accepted and not accepted. But the heavenly family could not do anything to the Xie family because the Xie family was invincible. The Shen and Xie family had an antagonistic relationship, and there was the deliberate estrangement and provocation by the late emperor to make mutual checks and balances to stabilize the court. Shen Xian and Marquis Xie's political views had never been in harmony. Shen Xian could not bear to see Xie Ding's radical and treacherous ways on the battlefield and his unorthodox methods. Xie Ding could not bear to see Shen Xian reading military books when fighting a war, as he was conservative and inflexible. Other than quarreling in court, the two families did not have any contact, and the late emperor was obviously happy to see this. After Xie Ding's wife passed away, Xie Ding did not marry a stepwife. He only had a concubine, and this concubine gave birth to 2 sons. In other words, Xie Jingxing had 2 younger brothers. Perhaps it was because Xie Ding was distressed that his son's mother died early, and wanted to make it up to him. He pampered Xie Jingxing since young, and finally nurtured Xie Jingxing into a lawless character. But even so, Xie Jingxing was still a wonderful and outstanding person. Other than his stubborn and indifferent nature, he was one of the best in Ming-Chi in terms of talent, intelligence, appearance, and family background. Otherwise, there would not be so many young ladies secretly admire him. It was such a pity that Xun Miao sighed in her heart. Such an outstanding youth had at the end a tragic ending of having his heart pierced by thousands of arrows and being skinned and air-dried. Perhaps the pity in her eyes was too obvious that youth suddenly looked over, and his eyes that were as deep as the stars slightly flashed as he looked at her with an unclear meaning. Chapter 17. Xun Miao lowered her head and put on an embarrassed look. Xie Jingxing died at the age of 26. The Fu family wanted to punish the Xie family, and the imperial family of Mingqi became more muddle-headed and incompetent. Instead of thinking about how to develop the country's strength, he was thinking about self-preservation. The hairpin family was a threat. Just like what Fu Xiui said, the Shun family was an honest person and the Xie family did not listen to commands, so naturally they were the thorn in the late emperor's eyes. Coincidentally, the Xiongnu invaded and the Xie family led the troops into battle. Xie Ding led the troops into battle. General Xie, who had been unbridled on the battlefield for his entire life, was finally annihilated. Xie Jingxing waited for his father's return at the end of the year in the capital, but in the end, he waited for a coffin. Xie Ding's death was not the end. When he was buried, the commoners of the Ding capital voluntarily sent Xie Ding off and the entire country was in mourning. This was a great taboo for the royal family. Thus not long after, he appointed the young Xie Jingxing to represent his father. This was not Xie Jingxing's first time on the battlefield and like the Xie family, the talent he displayed on the battlefield was enough to make the enemy tremble with fear. But knowing that there was something fishy about Xie Ding's death, the imperial family's edict almost pushed Xie Jingxing to a dead end. Xie Jingxing still accepted the imperial edict and went to the battlefield, but he was defeated. That day he was exposed to the enemy's target, and ended up with thousands of arrows piercing his heart. Not only that, for some unknown reason, the corpse was taken away. The Xiongnu skinned it and dried it before hanging it on the city wall to serve as a warning to others. The tragic ending was staged once again and the entire Mingqi was in mourning. Both father and son died on the battlefield. The common people could only see the ferocity of the Xiongnu and the bravery of the general, but they could not see the turbulent undercurrents of the conspiracy. At that time, the late emperor had already passed away and Fu Xiui ascended to the throne to take over the affairs of the court. He felt sorry for the Xie family's misfortune and conferred posthumous titles to the Xie father and son. The father and son of the Xie family, who had been conferred titles, had already passed away. Instead, the imperial court's consolation had benefited that concubine and her 2 sons born of concubines. Shen Miao still remembered Shen Xian's pained expression when he learned of Xie Jingxing's death. He had thought that when the Shen and Xie families were like fire and water, his father would not be sad when the Xie family was in trouble. Thinking about it now, Shen Xian was afraid that at that time, the fox grieved for the rabbit's death. The balance had been broken. Once the Xie family fell, the Shen family would follow. It was laughable that at that time she still wholeheartedly wanted to stir the Shen family into the muddy waters of the fight for the heir apparent. Shen Miao did not have any feelings towards the Xie family, but at the beginning she sighed for this youth's fate. This kind of brilliant and talented young man should have left a thick and colorful stroke in the Mingqi's rivers and mountains, but who knew that he would leave in such a way? Moreover, he clearly knew that the imperial edict was a summon of death, yet he still went. Perhaps it was to preserve the dignity of the Xie family, to prove that the Xie family had never lost their pride. But knowing that he could not do it, one could see that Xie Jingxing had an extraordinary character under his mischievous appearance. He was also a very righteous and brave person. As Shen Miao was thinking like this, she saw Kai Lin squeezing out from the crowd and handed a small cloth bag to Xie Jingxing and respectfully said, "Little Marquis, this is the only copy of the medical book that you instructed me to find. For a little tyrant to be so respectful towards others, it really made people's jaws drop." But thinking about it, was it not so? Compared to Kai Lin, Xie Jingxing was a big tyrant in the Ding capital. The Xie family was the tyrant among the tyrants. Thinking about it this way, one felt that Kai Lin's attitude towards Xie Jingxing was understandable. Feng Aning quietly whispered to Shen Miao, "How do you think little Marquis is compared to His Highness Prince Ding?" Shen Miao choked for a moment. She was not used to Feng Aning suddenly being so close to her. She said seriously, "Little Marquis Xie is better." From her point of view, how could a black-hearted villain like Fu Xiui be compared with a youth like Xie Jingxing? In the beginning, when Wan Yu and Fu Ming were reading the official history of Mingqi, when they read about the Xie family, they secretly told her that they felt that Xie Jingxing was a good man of indomitable spirit and it was a pity that he died. A youth that even one's own children praised was definitely a good one. Feng Aning was somewhat surprised and said after a long while, "It seems that you are really sad." Shen Miao was too lazy to explain to her. She saw Xie Jingxing, who was on the horse, took the bundle and tied it to the saddle. He glanced at Kai Lin and did not say anything before confidently whipping his whip and left. The billowing dust that the horse stirred up was unable to cover the charm of the youth on the horse. It was as if the rising sun in the sky was naturally dazzling. Kai Lin was somewhat disappointed, and the surrounding young females could not hide their disappointment. Most likely they were hoping that Xie Jingxing could stay longer. What was strange was that Xie Jingxing was the only one who was famous among the young females, yet the youths were not jealous of him. Perhaps it was because his style of doing things was different from others and it was really enviable. Shun Miao covered up the deep thoughts in her eyes. If the Xie family was toppled, the Shun family would also usher in a monstrous disaster. Since the two families had a relationship of interdependence, could it be eased a little? If that person from the Tian family wanted to take action, perhaps they would have to consider if they had the ability. Save the Xie family and save Xie Jingxing. As long as it was like this, it would increase the Shun family's bargaining chips. The Shun family was honest and kind while the Xie family was domineering. The imperial family would first deal with the Xie family, and perhaps she could make a deal with the Xie family. Xie Jingxing rode all the way and finally reined in his horse in front of a tavern. He got off the horse and walked into the innermost part of the tavern. In the side room, a white-clad gentleman with delicate features smiled when he saw him. Third younger brother. Take it. Xie Jingxing threw the bag in his hands over. Do not look for me for such matters in the future. If it was not because Gao Yang had asked him to find the only book on medical skills, he would not have gone to look for Kai Lin and would not be like a fool in Guangwentang for people to watch. Thinking of that silk flower, he felt some disgust as he patted his clothes. Gao Yang knew that this junior brother of his had always been misophobic, so he smiled slightly and joked, "With your temperament, you should move around more. Those students' age are similar to you, so you should learn to be lively like them." He paused and a mischievous smile floated on his face. Perhaps there are cute young ladies. You are just at the right age. What is the matter with being alone all day? Xie Jingxing was already used to his senior brother's serious appearance but boring character. He turned his head slightly impatiently, but his mind was thinking about the pair of eyes that he just saw. The eyes that were as clear as a cub contained deep sorrow and helplessness. That kind of expression made him startled for a moment before the owner of that pair of eyes lowered her head as if she was shy. But what kind of person was Xie Jingxing? When he was young, he had followed his father to travel extensively and fought in wars and killed people. Thus he had developed a pair of fiery golden eyes. That girl most likely wanted to pretend to be in love with him, but unfortunately she did not know that her own pair of eyes were as deep as a pool of stagnant water without a single ripple. It was really interesting. Chapter 18. When Shun Miao left the academy and returned to the Shun residence, it was already late. Shun Yu and Shun Qing still did not go with her, and Shun Miao was too lazy to bother with them. Old Shun Foran had already rested, so she went back to the western courtyard. Just as she reached the western courtyard, she heard a warm voice, "Young lady has finally returned." This old servant heard that young lady fell into the water and was very worried. Now that young lady is well, the stone in my heart is finally put down. Turning her head, she saw a middle-aged woman walking over. This woman was about 40 over years of age and was slightly plump, had a slightly dark complexion and was wearing a green-colored jacket. Even though the style was ordinary, the material was not bad. There was a heavy silver bracelet on her wrist and her eyes were full of smiles. "Gui Momo," Shun Miao lightly replied. That woman did not seem to feel that there was anything wrong with her and kept on saying, "This old servant wanted to come over earlier but ran, or had not recovered and kept tossing and turning. There was really no other way and could only throw ran, to his mother and return to the residence first. Only after seeing that young lady as well, would one be at ease." These words were said to be tactful, as Shun Miao was more important than her own grandson in her heart. If it was in the past, Shun Miao would be greatly moved after hearing these words, and then say some comforting words and give some money to Gue Momo to let her return to treat her grandson. But in another lifetime, looking at this woman in front of her, Shun Miao almost wanted to laugh at herself in her heart. How could she be so blind to think that such a person was a loyal servant? Not long after Shun Foran gave birth to Shun Miao, Shun Exime brought the order to go to war. Shun Miao was still young and could not travel, so Shun Furen could only bear the pain and leave her in the Shun residence. Old Shun Furen hired a wet nurse for her, and that was the current Gue Momo. Gue Momo was born in a farmer's residence, and at the beginning Shun Furen saw that she was diligent and honest. Afterwards, seeing that Gue Momo was able to nurse Shun Miao well, she was assured to stay by Shun Miao's side as an etiquette instructor. But in this world people would change. The western courtyard in the Shun residence was sparsely populated, and the ones in charge were the two households of the eastern courtyard and old Shun Furen. Gue Momo initially honestly took care of Shun Miao, but the more time passed, the clearer the situation was, and without hesitation, she sought refuge with old Shun Furen in the eastern courtyard. Gue Momo had a flattering character, and initially when she was determined to marry Fu Xiuyi, Gue Momo also fanned the flames. But the most hateful thing was that when old Shun Furen brought her distant niece to seek refuge in the Shun family, that niece's innocence was taken by eldest brother, Shan Qiu, and insisted on eldest brother's responsibility. At the end she became her sister-in-law and made eldest brother's inner courtyard into a foul atmosphere. Gue Momo was the witness that the niece was humiliated by Shan Qiu. Now that he thought about it, it was really a lame show. Once unfaithful, 100 times unfaithful. Moreover, for a person like Gue Momo who had been disloyal for 100 times, she naturally had to clean her up properly. It was better to kill a dog that ran out like this than to keep it. Gue Momo waited for a long time and did not hear any reward from Shan Miao. Thus the loving expression that she maintained on her face became stiff for a moment. She could not help but raise her head to look at Shan Miao, but saw Shan Miao looking at her indifferently without any special emotions. Her heart thumped and she did not know why, but there was a feeling of guilt. In the next moment, she heard Shan Miao's indifferent reply. "Oh, then it is really hard on Momo." Guyu lightly snorted and looked at Gue Momo with some ridicule. She had always looked down on Gue Momo's kind of flattering and vile appearance, as she relied on her position as young lady's wet nurse to act like a tyrant in the western courtyard. Unfortunately, her own young lady was previously coaxed by Gue Momo, and listened to a lot of Gue Momo's slanderous words, causing the original servants in the western courtyard to lose heart. Now it was good. After young lady woke up from falling into the water, it seemed that she had seen a lot of things clearly. Now that she had such a lukewarm attitude towards Gue Momo, it made Guyu's heart greatly comforted. Gue Momo smiled embarrassedly. She also could not figure out why Shun Miao treated her so coldly today. Thinking that it could be that Shun Miao was in a bad mood because of falling into the water, she smiled and advised, "This old servant will advise young lady not to be too sad and protect one's body. Young lady is like a flower and His Highness Prince Ding's heart would definitely like you. There will be a day." She had always said pleasing words and usually picked the words that Shun Miao liked to say to gain Shun Miao's favor. But when these words came out today, Shun Miao's expression changed. "Is Momo trying to tarnish my innocence by saying such words?" Shun Miao coldly said, "Even though father and mother are not in the general's residence, I am still the young lady of the general's residence and also the mistress of the western courtyard. Normal families would want to know of my innocence. For Momo to say such words, is it not to deliberately trap me in water and fire?" Gue Momo was surprised for a moment and subconsciously said, "How can young lady say such words? This old servant is doing it for your own good. So to say that it is my fault?" Shun Miao sneered, "That is also good. Why not ask old Furen about it? Nowadays the innocence of the daughters of the general's residence is like cabbages. Even cabbages are only worth a few copper coins." "Gue Momo, you said it in such a grandiose manner that I cannot help but ask if I am too lacking in etiquette." Perhaps she did not expect that Shun Miao would suddenly change the momentum. Even if she was in a bad mood, she should not take it out on herself. Gue Momo was used to being domineering in the western courtyard, and usually Shun Miao was manipulated by her very well. But today she was humiliated in front of Guyu and Jingzhe, so she was somewhat angry in her heart and could not help but say, "Young lady's words are really disrespectful to this old servant. This old servant has followed by young lady's side for more than 10 years. How can young lady think that this old servant is deliberately harming others? Presumptuous." Jingzhe said loudly, "Young lady is the mistress. Gue Momo, how dare you speak to young lady like this?" Gue Momo was shocked and was also annoyed at herself for being agitated just now. But words that were said were like water that was spilled, and there were many servants surrounding them to watch the show. She only thought that Shun Miao was a young lady that was easily coaxed and quickly softened her voice. Young lady, this old servant is really distressed for young lady. This old servant had followed young lady for so many years and had long treated young lady as my own child. Just now it was this old servant's words that were wrong. Young lady must not be angry and be careful not to harm your health. Treated her as her own child? Shun Miao sneered in her heart. She felt that Gue Momo was a wonderful person. Normally she would receive a lot of money from her, but she treated the Eastern Courtyard as the proper mistress. At the end she caused her eldest brother to suffer such a big loss. If it was in her previous lifetime, she would have long sent out an imperial decree to be beaten to death and thrown out if she met such a wicked servant in the inner palace. But now, since Gue Momo sincerely wanted to rely on the Eastern Courtyard, then how about borrowing her hands to let the Eastern Courtyard suffer a loss? She raised her eyebrows and said in a light tone, since Gue Momo knows her mistake, then the fine is only 3 months' salary. Gue Momo's expression stiffened and Shun Miao's lips raised. What should Gue Momo do without money? Naturally it was to go to the Eastern Courtyard to express her loyalty. Chapter 19. A cold wind blew in the night. As it got closer to late autumn, the weather became colder and colder. The Ding capital was also located in the northern lands, so it was strangely cold. Under the light of the lamp, the girl was holding a book in her hand, leaning on the couch as she slowly flipped through it. She didn't even realize that the tea beside her had gone cold. She just watched in a daze. Bai Lu stared blankly at her young lady. It was as if in one night, this young lady had become not the same as before. Just like now, quietly reading a book. Not to mention that Shun Miao in the past hated to read books, but now looking at it, if one did not know that it was her own young lady, Bai Lu would have thought that she was looking at a noble foreign. How could a young lady have such an imposing manner? Bai Lu did not understand as she stood there in a daze. Until Shuangjiang came over and pushed her and softly reprimanded. Why are you standing there foolishly for? He walked over and draped the cloak over Shun Miao before advising warmly, young lady, it is not early anymore and one still need to go to Guangwentang tomorrow. It is better to rest early. Shun Miao shook her head. Go and rest first. I'll watch for a while more. How could there be the logic of the maids resting first when the mistress did not sleep? Shuangjiang was helpless and wanted to continue persuading but was pulled by Gu Yu who was changing Shun Miao's tea. After changing the tea, she pulled Bai Lu and Shun Miao to the outer room. What is the matter, Gu Yu? Bai Lu did not understand. Young lady's body has just recovered. Why did you not advise her? Why did I not persuade? Gu Yu had a headache. It is just that how would young lady listen to my words now? You've been reading all day. I guess it's teacher's homework. Miss, you've made up your mind to read it. What can I do? She glanced worriedly at the inner room. In the past, when she was a coward, she always needed someone to make decisions for her. Now he was no longer a coward, but he was the one who made the decision, and no one dared to object. Serving in close proximity, Gu Yu could feel that every time Shun Miao gave an order, no one dared to refuse. Even though he spoke in such an indifferent tone, he exuded a majestic aura. It seemed that even Master's anger was not this scary. Gu Yu sighed. In the room, Shun Miao was still reading. She looked at it seriously, not missing a single detail. If one looked carefully, one would discover that she was holding the official history of Mingqi in her hands. Since the founding of the country till now, all the major events that happened in Mingqi, how would she know what would happen in the next few decades and was prepared to find some ways to prevent the tragedy from happening? Before that, she had to find the source of the current situation of these families. The emperor's order to eradicate these aristocratic families was nearing. Shun Miao remembered clearly that if there were no accidents, there would be a catastrophe next month. The enemy of an enemy is a friend. If these aristocratic families arrived, it would soon be the Shun family's turn. Before Shun Xian returned, the Shun residents could only be supported by her alone, and she also had to guard against those jackals and wolves in the eastern courtyard. Shun Miao's expectations were not wrong. That night, Gue Momo entered Rongjing Tang. She came over to deliver the local specialties that she brought back to the manor but was having a chat with Zhang Mama, who was by old Shun Foreign's side. Her words were all about Shun Miao's increasingly rebellious actions, and how she would vent her anger at every turn. How would Zhang Mama not know her thoughts? After a few words that were neither salty nor light, Gue Momo let Zhang Mama put in a few good words in front of old Shun Foreign before leaving. Just as she walked out of Rong Jingtang's courtyard, she saw Ren Wanyun's maid Xiang Lan walking over and smiled when she saw her. Gue Momo, I was just about to look for you. Oh. Gue Momo narrowed her eyes, and when she saw Xiang Lan, she also smiled. What matter is young lady Xiang Lan looking for me for? Nothing much. Xiang Lan came over and pulled Gue Momo's arm. It is that our foreign heard that you know of a place that sells lipstick, and the lipstick is especially good. So she wanted to ask you where is the place that sells lipstick? These words were obviously an excuse. At that time Ren Wanyun wanted to look for Gue Momo to talk about some private matters. Gue Momo was well aware of it and followed along with Xiang Lan. What is this matter? Since Foreign wants to hear, I will tell Foreign about that place. Speaking of that lipstick, many young ladies and furins of official families love to use it. When Xiang Lan reached Kai Yunyuan, the maids outside had already been sent away. Ren Wanyun was sitting on the couch. Second Shin Master was still socializing outside and had not returned, so she was casually doing needlework at the side. Most likely he was embroidering a pouch, but she was eating a plate of grapes at the side while she was embroidering. This was a rare item, as in this weather one would not be able to find grapes in the Ding capital. Only Second Shin Master had the ability to ask for a basket of grapes and gave it to the females in his courtyard to eat. Gue Momo secretly spat in her heart. Even though on the surface it looked like the second household of the Shin family did not treat the first household badly, but the food that Shun Miao used looked fresh on the surface, but it was like those upstart things that could not be seen in public. Speaking about the food, Shun Miao did not have the treatment of grapes. She was still thinking in her heart when Ren Wanyun finally put down the needlework in her hands and spoke. Gue Momo. Gue Momo quickly recovered to her senses and responded. Foreign, this old servant is here. Ren Wanyun was already a 40-year-old person, and even though she maintained herself well, there were still some fine lines at the corner of her eyes. She was just sitting there wearing the best tailored clothes, and every move she made was the style of a foreign of the household. Even when she was smiling, there was a dignified look. She said, "Heard that you have returned. Now that little Five's health is better, you need to take good care of her." Gue Momo laughed in her heart, who did not know that the eastern courtyard could not wait for the western courtyard to be unlucky. How would Ren Wanyun be so kind-hearted and was only trying to deceive others? Sure enough, one could only hear Ren Wanyun speaking again. These days little Five's mood was not very good after falling into the water. Eldest brother and eldest Saw are not around, so no matter what I do as an aunt, it would be wrong. Even if one wanted to hear any news, one would have to come and hear it from you. This meant that Gue Momo wanted to tell Ren Wanyun about Shun Miao's every move. Gue Momo quickly said, "It is fifth young lady's fortune that Foreign has the heart to care for fifth young lady. But from this old servant's view, this time fifth young lady fell into the water because she was angry. These few days her temperament had changed a lot and even treated this old servant estranged. Not to say about other things, just today this old servant was fined 3 months' salary without any rhyme or reason." She said with a bitter face. When this old servant heard that fifth young lady fell into the water, one was so anxious that one did not even care about one's little grandson who was still sick. Who knew that fifth young lady would reprimand this old servant's heart did not feel good. Ren Wanyun was somewhat impatient to hear the hidden meaning of this old woman's words and said, "Little Five, after all it was because of a mental illness. Then Gue Momo, from what you see, has little Five's attitude towards His Highness Prince Ding changed?" This was the question she wanted to ask the most. Gue Momo's eyes turned and said, "Fifth young lady seemed to want to draw a clear line with His Highness Prince Ding, and did not allow this old servant to mention it today. But this old servant had brought fifth young lady for so many years and was clear of her temperament. Fifth young lady was exceptionally persistent on the matter of His Highness Prince Ding, and would not give up so easily. These words were most likely said by young lady in a moment of anger, and cannot be taken seriously." Just as her voice fell, a trace of ruthlessness appeared on Ren Wanyun's face. Chapter 20. After Gue Momo left, Shun Qing walked out from behind the screen. She climbed to Ren Wanyun's side and snuggled up to her mother. Her tone was filled with unconcealable anger. Mother, Shun Miao is not willing to give up His Highness Prince Ding. What should I do? In the 3 households of the Shun family, the first household had the highest official position. If Shun Miao begged Shun Xian to bestow a marriage, it was very possible. But she also loved Prince Ding, and if Shun Miao succeeded, what would she count as? His Highness Prince Ding was such a handsome person. How could he be occupied by Shun Miao, that stupid and ignorant person? Every time she thought about it, Shun Qing would be 100 times unwilling. Do not worry. In this Shun residence, no one can be bigger than you. Ren Wanyun said. Shun Miao is stupid and there is nothing to fear. Mother naturally has ways to prevent her from marrying His Highness Prince Ding, but it is you. She sighed. There is no harm in looking at the people in Qiu Shuiyuan seriously. Do you think that second girl is a good person? You have such thoughts, but it is not possible that second girl does not have such thoughts. Xin Yu? Shun Qing frowned. She also loves His Highness Prince Ding? How is it possible? Shun Qing said. Moreover, if she really likes His Highness Prince Ding, third Shu cannot be compared to eldest Shu and cannot speak. It seems that no matter how one looks, there is nothing to fear. You. Ren Wanyun rebuked Shun Qing's forehead. How can I be assured? Your third Shin is a powerful person. At that time your third Shu. Seemingly realizing that these words should not be said in front of the child, Ren Wanyun suddenly shut her mouth. She only said, in short, fifth girl, do not take it to heart. Mother naturally has a way. Thanking mother. Shun Qing said sweetly. Both mother and daughter laughed together. In Qiu Shuiyuan, Chen Roqiu was sitting at the table writing. She was a female from a scholarly family and had unlimited talent. Even though she was already a wife, she still liked to write and read books. Chen Roqiu stood behind her in a yellow satin long dress. Her figure was delicate and slender, just like a little Chen Roqiu. Mother, why did you say that to Gue Momo just now? After a long time, she could not help but ask. Gue Momo came over once but unexpectedly. Not only did Chen Roqiu not let Gue Momo stop Shun Miao from falling in love with His Highness Prince Ding, but let Gue Momo persuade Shun Miao that His Highness Prince Ding was a good choice. Isn't this making her make up her mind to marry His Highness Prince Ding? Xin Yu somewhat complained. Chen Roqiu put down the brush in her hands and sighed softly. She pulled Shen Yu's hand to sit in front of the couch and said warmly, Didn't mother tell you before that no matter what you do, especially in this inner courtyard, one must take a roundabout way to do it. In this way, no matter what happens in the future, no one will be able to control you. Shen Yu shook her head. Mother, I do not understand. Chen Roqiu smiled. Her daughter was gentle, talented, and not stupid, but she was still too young. Perhaps it was because Third Master Shun loved her too much that she did not know the dangers in the inner courtyard. When she was in the minister's mansion, she had a bunch of elder sisters, concubines. None of them were easy to deal with. So after she got married, she held Third Master Shun firmly in the palm of her hands. It was just that she was unable to give birth to a son, and that was the most regretful thing. No matter how much Third Master Shun loved her, without a son, there would be no leverage. Sooner or later, Third Master Shun would make his concubines cut off the broth of no offspring. At that time, what kind of scene would it be? So this daughter, she had to educate her well. What do you think of Shen Wu? She asked softly. Shen Yu thought about it and replied, not good at writing, chess, calligraphy and painting, timid and stupid and not good with words. If it was not for eldest Bo's name, one fear that no one would give her any face. Even a Shu daughter would seem to have a better bearing than her. If someone were to hear it, they would be shocked. These words that belittled Shan Miao to be worthless actually came from the mouth of this gentle Tang older sister. One had to know that Shun Miao's best friend was Shun Yu. Perhaps it was like this in the past. Chen Roqiu shook her head. But after falling into the water, I see that Shen Wu has changed a lot. Why does mother say so? Shen Yu was puzzled. Chen Roqiu also did not know why she had such a feeling. Perhaps it could be said that a little girl had suffered a blow and spoke in a fit of pique. But Chen Roqiu had seen a lot of people, and compared to her own astute second saw, she could see people more clearly. Shen Miao had become smarter. Her conversation with old foreign and Rong Jingtang, and the way she behaved were completely different from before. Could it be that Prince Ding's matter had given her such a blow, or was there an expert by her side to guide her? No matter what, one must not take it lightly. Perhaps she had suffered a blow from Prince Ding. But your mother had told you before that intelligent females do not deal with females but deal with males. Chan Rochio's voice was soft as if she was singing. Since you also like His Highness Prince Ding, why put all your eyes on Shan Miao? No matter how powerful your eldest beau is, there is no such thing as a man in the world that would love a stupid and ignorant female. His Highness Prince Ding is a noble prince, and if he were to marry such an unbearable female, wouldn't he be the joke of the world? But Xin Yu was somewhat wronged. Listen to mother's words. Not only do you not alienate Shen Wu because of this, you must also be friends with her like before. You must be more diligent and let everyone see your talent and beauty. The more outstanding you are, the more stupid she would appear. Chan Rochio smiled as if she was gossiping, but the words that she said were sharp. I let Gue Momo persuade her to continue to love Prince Ding. For such a stupid female to fall in love with him, it would show that she is a joke that does not know about herself. His Highness Prince Ding would only hate her more. Like this, Xin Yu seemed to understand a little. Chan Rochio touched her head. You are a smart child and should understand mother's meaning. So to persuade her to continue to love Prince Ding, and make a fool of herself in front of Prince Ding. Only in this way would His Highness Prince Ding notice the more outstanding you. Even if the entire world wants His Highness Prince Ding to marry Shen Wu, if you are able to let the person in His Highness Prince Ding's heart be you, then you will win. Mother. To say it out loud like that, Shen Yu shyly buried her head in Chan Rochio's embrace. I understand. Chan Rochio smiled. In the beginning, there were many obstructions in her marriage with Third Master Shun. At that time, Third Master Shun was considered a young talent, and many matchmakers came to discuss the marriage. Why did he choose her? It was only because there was a chance encounter in the temple, and she happened to be wearing a white brocade dress playing the zither under a tree, and was heard by Third Master Shun. Third Master Shun was shocked by her, and when he returned, he insisted on marrying her as his wife. Third Master Shun loved listening to the zither, and his favorite color was white. Look, so many females were fighting and she was the final winner. It was only because she knew from the beginning that she was dealing with a man. So what if there were 3D daughters of the Shen family? Only her Yuer could deal with His Highness Prince Ding. Chapter 21. No matter what the Eastern Courtyard did, Shen Miao still began to deliberately alienate the second and third household. She also no longer stuck to Xin Yu and Shen Qing like before. Initially, everyone in the Shun residence thought that she was just throwing a tantrum because of the incident of falling into the water, but when Shen Miao started to have her own ideas, everyone felt that something was not right. Gue Momo as usual advised Shen Miao not to be angry with the Eastern Courtyard, and would occasionally beat around the bush to say that Prince Ding was an unparalleled man in Mingqi. But Shen Miao seemed to have steeled her heart, and every time Gue Momo mentioned this person, she would harshly reprimand her, giving Gue Momo a headache. But the Western Courtyard was filled with people from the second and third household, and there would always be some unruly servants. Gu Yu and the rest thought that since Shen Miao's temperament had changed, she would tidy up the inner courtyard, but who knew that Shen Miao did not even bother about it? Shen Miao naturally had her own plans. These days she went to Guangwentang more and more diligently. Even though everyone still looked at her as if she was at the bottom, she was not annoyed and only did her own things every day. The more magnanimous she was, the more boring people felt, and they actually had some peaceful days. Early in the morning, after the CI class ended, Shen Miao felt that her chest was somewhat stuffy and casually walked around the garden of Guangwentang. Even though Guangwentang was a school, the area it occupied was rather vast. Because there were 3 grades of Country 1, Country 2 and Country 3, Shen Miao was in Country 2 at her age but unknowingly walked to Country 1. Coincidentally, she saw a child sitting on the steps wiping his tears. This child looked to be around 8 or 9 years old and was fair and plump. Perhaps it was because his body was a little bloated that he looked like a fat ball. He was wearing a dark blue silver-colored gown, small cloth boots and a round collar around his neck. He was like a doll that walked out of a New Year painting. Shen Miao was slightly startled before walking over and softly said, Why are you crying? That child did not expect that someone would suddenly come, and was so shocked that he fell down the steps with a plop. He did not cry but sat up and stared blankly at Shen Miao. He was fair and plump with a pair of bright and piercing eyes. There was a small knot on his head and there were still tear stains on his face, making him look charmingly naive. Shen Miao could not help but laugh out loud. The child called out "Big Sister" in a childish voice. Shen Miao's heart was about to melt because of this child. In her past lifetime she gave birth to Wan Yu and Fu Ming, but before Wan Yu and Fu Ming were 5 years old, she was a hostage in the Qin country. By the time they returned, the two children had already learned to obediently call her Mother Empress. Shen Miao herself did not know what her two children were like before they were 5 years old. Although the child in front of her was 8 or 9 years old, he looked like he did not know much about the world, which made her think of Wan Yu and Fu Ming. Shen Miao slightly squatted down and touched his head. Why are you crying? Mr. asked me a question. If I couldn't answer, he would hit my palm. The child stretched out his hand, revealing his red palm. He said with grievance, it really hurt a lot. Shen Miao wanted to tease her and asked, what questions did teacher test you with? Teacher wants me to write "the fox grieves for the rabbit." But I can't. The child said with a sad face. If one was at the age of the 1st grade, it would indeed be somewhat unreasonable if one could not even recite the words. Not to mention Shen Miao herself, when Fu Ming was this child's age, he had already started to learn how to deal with the political affairs of the court. Even though it was only a pretense, he could more or less cope with it. Even though the youths of the imperial family matured early, the children who came to Guangwentang to study were also the children of nobles and should not be enlightened so late. That child felt that he did not complain enough and continued to whine. If father knew about it when I return, he would definitely scold me harshly. What meaning is there for me to live? It would be better to just bang my head and die. Shen Miao was shocked by the child's sorrowful tone and felt both angry and funny at the same time. Thinking which family this living treasure came from, she did not know from where he learned such dramatic words. She asked, which family's child are you from? That child looked at Shen Miao. Shen Miao was currently only 14 years old, and in addition to her childlike appearance, she did not seem to be much older than this child. But one did not know why she had an indescribable temperament, as if she had seen great storms and waves, which could calm one's heart. Even this child could not help but quieten down when he heard that and set out his origins word by word. I am the second young master of the Count of Pingnan's family in the capital, Su Minglang. My father is the Count of Pingnan. Su Yu, and my eldest brother is the heir of the Count of Pingnan, Su Mingfeng. It was like pouring beans out of a bamboo tube. He clearly stated out his background. Shen Miao was surprised for a moment. Su family? Count of Pingnan? No matter if it was in the past lifetime or this lifetime, the Su family and the Shen family did not have any relation. This was because they had conflicting political views in the court. The relationship between the Su family and the Xie family was not bad. The Count of Pingnan, Su Yu, and the Marquis of Linan, Xie Ding, were very good brothers, and Su Mingfeng and Xie Jingxing were friends since young. How good was their relationship? At the beginning, when Su Mingfeng died, only Xie Jingxing dared to collect his corpse. Yes, Su Mingfeng died. Or it could be said that the entire Su family perished. The late emperor found out the evidence of the Su family's embezzlement and private sale of soldiers and horses. Once the matter of soldiers and horses was involved, naturally there was no leeway. The imperial edict was so sudden and swift that there was not even a trial, and the family was directly executed on the spot. In broad daylight, the entire Su family's blood flowed from the east to the west of the Ding capital. When Xie Jingxing knew of the news, it was already too late, and there was not a single survivor in the Su family. None of the people who were on good terms in the past came forward, and it was Xie Jingxing who personally went to collect the corpse of the Su family's master. After that, Xie Ding went to the late emperor to ask for forgiveness and requested to be buried on account of the Su family's meritorious services for Ming Qi. The late emperor allowed it, and the Su family's funeral matters were handled by the Xie family. Shen Miao remembered very clearly that when Shen Exine came back at the end of the year and knew of the matter, he sighed. The Su family's demise was 2 months later. Very quickly, this ignorant child in front of her also died under that cold imperial edict. Her expression suddenly became a little cold, and there was a hint of sternness in her eyes. The child could not help but shrink back a little. When Shen Miao looked at the child again, her tone was as gentle as before. Su Mingfeng, is it that heir of the Su family who recently made great meritorious services and managed the military horses very well? Yes. The child raised his head and replied. Father said that His Majesty would definitely bestow eldest brother a scholarly title this time. Shen Miao smiled. She bent down slightly and got closer to the child and softly said, Did you not say that if your father knew that you are unable to answer teacher's question, he would punish you? I have a way to make him not punish you. What is it? The child blinked his eyes. You must promise me that you will not let him know that it was I who told you. Then I will say it. All right. The child thought for a long while and nodded. Chapter 22. The Su family was a large family that was in charge of military horses. As long as it was a high-ranking official that was in charge of weapons, provisions, military horses, and so on, they always seemed to be a cut above the others. The status of the Su family's military horses was outstanding. Since the founding of Mingqi, all of them were obedient. It was the same for the Count of Pinnan, Su Yu. In his opinion, the Su family was full of flowers, and it would definitely last for a long time. Perhaps all loyal officials would think that as long as they were loyal, the royal family would not mistreat them. However, since ancient times, accompanying a ruler was like accompanying a tiger. Who could say for sure what was going on in this world? Su Yu was over 40 years old, and his wife could be considered to be in love. Although he had a few concubines, they all gave birth to daughters. He only had 2 sons of his first wife, so he was always particularly strict with his sons. The eldest son, Su Mingfeng, had entered officialdom at a young age and was still in charge of the military horses like him. In this half a year, he was even more outstanding than Su Yu. Some time ago, Su Mingfeng discussed with the veterinarians in the Imperial Hospital to reform some regulations on the military horses, and the number of horses that died due to the horse plague was reduced by half. This was a great merit. Next month, after the statistics of the military horses were done, Su Mingfeng would definitely be rewarded. The reward was secondary. The main thing was the glory it represented. Su Yu had already passed the age of 40, and now that Su Mingfeng was at the right age, it was time for the son to take over his father's business and expand Su Mingfeng's fame. If Su Mingfeng was more outstanding, perhaps he would become the next crown prince's confidant. Su Yu was naturally happy that his eldest son was so outstanding, but his youngest son gave him a headache. Most likely it was because the youngest son, Su Minglang, was obtained when his foreign was quite old, and foreign doted on him so much that he developed a spoiled temperament. Not only was he as outstanding as his eldest son, but he was also lagging behind his peers. Originally Su Minglang was not the eldest son and naturally did not need to inherit the position of the heir, thus it did not matter if he was a little stupid. However, Su Yu had a stubborn personality. How could he tolerate anything bad happening to his son? Thus every time he came back from Guangwentang to do a homework test, his youngest son would receive the scolding and foreign would protect him. It was really somewhat chaotic. On this day, Su Yu was discussing matters with Su Mingfeng in the study. The father and son had endless topics to talk about regarding the military horses. Old Master Su was delighted. He had given birth to such an outstanding son, so what was there to be dissatisfied about? As they spoke, they talked about Su Mingfeng's reward that would be coming next month. In my opinion, His Majesty will definitely confer an official title this time. Let's not talk about the jewels for now. Father only hopes that your career will be more stable. Now that the Xiongnu were getting restless, they needed to pay more attention to their military strength. Mingfeng, as long as you are valued by His Majesty, our Su family will only go further in the future. Your younger brother is still young. The Su family still needs you to take up the mantle. Su Mingfeng nodded his head. He was in his youth, and there was an air of righteousness between his brows. However, he couldn't help but reveal a hint of pride in his eyes. This was the most promising period for a young man. What's more, it was his father's affirmation. Even though he had always been calm and steady when it came to official matters, he was elated at this moment. Both father and son were in a good mood when they heard a servant call from outside the door. Master, second young master is back. It was the time when second young master Su Minglang was leaving school. Every day after school, Su Minglang would be called to Master Su's study to test his homework. Today was no exception. Master Su had a headache as he held his forehead. Looking at his outstanding eldest son and then looking at his second son who was as stupid as a piglet, it was somewhat comical. Su Minglang would come to the study every day and in the end, he would make Su Yu so angry that he would be flipped upside down. It was the same today. Su Minglang slowly entered the study and his lips curled up before calling out, "Father, eldest brother." He was like a round ball so silly that it was cute. Su Mingfeng smiled as he touched his younger brother's head. "Minglang, is it good in the academy today?" Su Minglang pursed his lips and did not speak. Every time he did this, it meant that it was not good. Not good at all. He was reprimanded by teacher. Master Su put on a straight face and said to Su Minglang, "Stretch out your palm." Su Minglang shrank a little and stretched out his hand aggrievedly. One could see that there were a few red marks on his white and tender palm. If it was not the marks of being hit by a board, then what was it? Master Su had an expression of having expected it, but it was Su Mingfeng who was somewhat distressed for his younger brother and asked, "Why did this teacher hit so heavily? He is just a child." "It is because you all pamper him all day long that he is spoilt." Master Su flew into a rage when he heard it and said angrily, "What went wrong today?" Little Su Minglang paused for a moment before saying bashfully, "Teacher asked me to silently grieve for the death of a rabbit, but I am unable to do it. What do you want me to say about you?" Master Su's face was pained. "You can't even silently say the word. Look at those young masters of your age, which one is like you? When your eldest brother was your age, he had already started to learn how to ride the military horse. My Su family's face is almost thrown away by you." Su Mingfeng wanted to persuade but heard his second younger brother sobbing, "Even though I am unable to silently say the words fox grieve for the death of a rabbit, I am able to silently say, cook the hound after the cunning rabbit is killed. Speaking of which, there are still two more words. Since it is the same meaning, isn't it the same as cooking the hound after the cunning rabbit is killed?" Nonsense. Master Su simply did not know what to say. Su Mingfeng smiled and said, "Second younger brother, these two words do not have the same meaning? Then what is the meaning?" Su Minglang looked up and asked. "Fox grieve for the death of a rabbit means that when the rabbit dies, the fox feels that it has the same fate and feels sad. But the meaning of cooking the hound after the cunning rabbit is killed is that when the rabbit dies, the hound that was used to hunt had no value and was also cooked. This means that once there is no use value and cannot be used for benefits, then those tools can be discarded. Cooking the hound after the cunning rabbit is killed is somewhat similar to burning the bridge after crossing the river." Su Mingfeng was a good older brother and patiently answered his younger brother's question. It was Su Minglang who shook his head and still had a puzzled look on his face. Since it is something that would happen after the rabbit dies, then it should not be exactly the same. After all, the rabbit is dead. Just as Su Mingfeng was about to explain, he saw his father's expression suddenly paused and softly repeated, "The rabbit is dead?" "Yes." Su Minglang spread out his palms and his chubby face still had an innocent and stubborn expression. "After all, the rabbit is dead. Doesn't this mean that as long as the rabbit dies, the fox and the dog would be out of luck? Since everyone would be out of luck, then the meaning of these words is the same. Naturally, it was a rule that the hound would be cooked after the cunning rabbit was killed. The reason why a fable was a fable, there must be a big truth in life. When the rabbit died, the fox was smarter than the dog and could see its own ending. But who was the hound? What was the ending of the dog that helped its master to hunt the rabbit?" Su Yu's expression gradually sank. Chapter 23. At the beginning of October, a major event happened. In the Ding capital, the heir of the Count of Pingnan's family, eldest young master Su Mingfeng, suddenly contracted a serious illness and needed to recuperate at home. The Count of Pingnan doted on his beloved son and together with his furin, stayed at home to take care of eldest young master Su. The matters at the military horse farm were temporarily put aside and His Majesty bestowed some things to express his condolences, and led a new person to take over the matters. The commoners in the Ding capital all sighed because of this. That eldest young master Su was a young talent and had made great contributions not long after he entered the official career. Seeing that he was about to have a meteoric rise and that his future was limitless, he suddenly contracted a serious illness. Indeed, the heavens were jealous of heroic talents. If this dragged on for 3 to 5 years, one feared that when he turned back, there would be no place for him to stand in court. The commoners saw it this way, but the colleagues in court were not sure. Some intelligent people said, "How is this illness? This is clearly avoiding calamity." Originally, one thought that this Su family was like adding oil to a raging fire, and was about to invite fire onto oneself. One did not think that one would be able to see the situation clearly and take drastic measures. When these matters reached Shan Miao's ears, she was standing in the courtyard trimming the branches and leaves of the begonia flowers. These few days in Guangwentang, because of eldest young Master Su's matter, everyone had new topics to talk about and did not pay much attention to her. It was rare for her to be free for a few days. "Now, young lady, like these flowers and grasses," Guyu smiled. "These begonia flowers grow really well." The crimson petals of the begonia flower showed a bit of lively color in the chilly autumn day. When she was the Empress, she learned to manage the life of the inner palace, helped Fu Xiuyi to win over the powerful ministers, went to Qin country as a hostage, and fought with Mei Furan. Most of the time she lived in power and politics, so how could she have the mood to cut flowers and relax like now? "Do you know why the begonia flowers bloom so brightly?" she asked. Even though Guyu did not understand why her young lady would ask such a question, she still smiled and replied, "These are the seeds that the stewards brought back from outside." One heard that it is a very precious seed, and Furan had also praised that this kind of begonia flowers look especially good in autumn. Shen Miao gently shook her head. How could it be this reason? Just like the gloomy and bitter cold place in the cold palace, even the outside of the cold palace was filled with flowers, but under those flowers there were piles of bones. The most beautiful things in the world have the coldest reasons. Now that the Su family understood this, what would they do? She smiled. In the residence of Count Pingnan, young Master Su's courtyard was tightly guarded. Other than his personal servants and relatives, no one else could enter. One could only smell the heavy scent of medicine inside. Master Su had closed the door and refused to see any guests, refusing to see any outsiders. As a good friend of the Su clan's young Marquis Xia, he naturally had to pay a visit. The Xia clan's horse carriage was parked outside the Su residence. The servant was struggling to move the medicinal ingredients down from the top. The herbs were all packed in boxes, which was enough to show the care that the young Xia Marquis had for his good friend. In the study, Su Mingfeng was dressed in a green robe. Other than his figure being somewhat thin, his expression was as spirited as usual. Where was there any trace of a serious illness? Across from him, the youth in embroidered clothes frowned and asked loudly, "Avoiding disaster? Not bad." Su Mingfeng looked at his good friend and sighed. "Now you have also seen that the Su family's momentum is getting better and better." The Su family had been going on for several generations, and from the matter of the military horses, it really should not be promoted. But not only did His Majesty not suppress them, he even flattered the Su family. "You also performed a meritorious deed," Xie Jingxing reminded. "Father and I were quite proud of our meritorious service, but we forgot about the hidden danger behind it. If the merit was too great, it would be a disaster. I'm sure you understand what I'm saying. It's just that the Su family was originally in the middle of it, and it was inevitable that they were blinded by a single leaf. Now that the light has cleared, they have no choice but to rein in the horse at the edge of the cliff. It's really dangerous." "This is also good." Xie Jingxing nodded his head. "But you will have to stay at home for a few years. I only hope that the Su family is safe and sound." Su Mingfeng said, "Let's not talk about me. How about talking about you? The Su family and the Xie family are bound together, and the Su family has already decided to rein in the horse before the cliff, your Xie family." She didn't finish her sentence. Xie Jingxing raised his eyebrows. "What can he do to me if I do not enter officialdom? There is only one Marquis of Lineage in the Xie family, so he would have to take into account the public's opinion." Xie Jingxing and Su Mingfeng were different. For the sake of the Su family, Su sent his son into the official career early. But Xie Jingxing did not enter the officialdom, and only held an idle position. There were a few times when he went to war with Xie Ding and still held the title of a biological son. Even if the imperial family wanted to suppress the Xia family, they would not suppress a family that did not even have a son to take over. You have such deep foresight. Su Mingfeng could not help but laugh. I am not guarding against him, Xie Jingxing said lazily. He was indeed not guarding against the imperial family, but to go against his father. But he frowned and suddenly changed the topic. Why did you suddenly think of this matter? Originally I had reminded you several times, but you did not put it in your eyes. Su Mingfeng lowered his head in shame. Originally it was just a moment of pride and was proud of it, so how would one think so much? This time it is all thanks to my second younger brother. Your second younger brother? Xie Jingxing was originally lazily leaning against the chair, but when he heard it, he sat up straight and a strange look flashed in his eyes. That glutinous rice dumpling? It was not a strange thing that Su Minglang was a stupid dumpling, so how could he still remind the Su family about these things? Could it be that Su Minglang had taken the wrong medicine? Su Mingfeng explained the ins and outs of the matter, and at the end, he then said, if it was not for second younger brother's mistake, perhaps it would lead to a big disaster? Mistake? Xie Jingxing softly said to himself. Just at this moment, he heard a tender voice, eldest brother, mother, let me send you some snacks. Su Minglang was carrying a plate of flour-like flaky pastries as he walked in with his short legs. He was round and plump like a glutinous rice ball, and there were a lot of pastry crumbs on the corner of his mouth. It was obvious that he had secretly eaten a lot on the way over. These days, because of his inadvertent reminder, the Su family changed their strategy. Even Master Su, who was most dissatisfied with him, for the first time ever felt that his son was of great use, intelligent and agile, and great wisdom looks foolish. Su Foreign kept on making delicious food for him, and in just a few days, Su Minglang had gained a lot of weight. He saw that Xie Jingxing was still around and could not help but lower his voice by a few degrees. He did not know why, but he was somewhat afraid of his older brother's handsome good friend. Su Minglang placed the snacks on the table and threw a sentence, eldest brother, I am leaving. He turned around and was about to run, but he did not want to be grabbed by his collar. Turning back to look, that youth was dressed in brocade clothes as he gently crouched down and touched his head. That pair of peach blossom eyes were smiling and lively, but his eyes were incomparably cold. He asked, who taught you to say that? Su Minglang's eyes widened. When the cunning rabbit is dead, the hound is cooked. Xie Jingxing smiled evilly. Chapter 24. The days always pass very quickly. As the weather got colder, the students of Guangwentang started to prepare for the academy examinations at the end of the month. Boys wanted to enter officialdom, while girls wanted to show off their talents, which would add a lot of value to their marriage in the future. Or perhaps they wanted to catch the eye of a family of equal status. This was what the children of noble families had to do. Even a pampered female like Feng and Ning also started to work hard these days. There was no need to talk about Shenqing and Shenyu, especially Shenyu, who spent all day in the east courtyard playing the zither and reciting poems, hoping to be in the limelight again. Shenyu and Shenqing were already 15 years old, and according to the rules, it was time for them to look at each other. The females of Mingqi would be married at around 16 and could be engaged at 15. The reason why Shenqing and Shenyu were hesitant was because their eyes were too high, and they did not look up to those who were ordinary, but those who were too high did not know what was good for them. In the end, these two households all turned their eyes towards Prince Ding at the same time. Among the late king's 9 sons, only the 9th, Prince Ding, was not engaged and was only in his early 20s, so it was time for him to get married. However, due to various reasons, the position of the imperial concubine was still undecided. Like a piece of delicious cake, Prince Ding would personally be the examiner in the academy examinations. That was why many of the females were so energetic, hoping to gain a good impression in front of Prince Ding, wishing that Prince Ding would fall in love with them at first sight. Xun Miao did not have such thoughts. Even if she had another life, she would still be a woman who was not exposed to the moon. She did not know how to recite poetry, nor did she know how to play the zither or dance. After all, he couldn't stand on the stage and talk about the important matters of the court. What's more, she did not want to have any relationship with Prince Ding. In the previous lifetime, Prince Ding used her Shen family, harmed her children and slaughtered her entire family. This debt must be settled sooner or later. Since it was a blood feud, how could they be husband and wife? Feng and Ning asked her, "Why are you not reading? Seeing that it is almost the end of the month, if you were to drop your tail again, wouldn't it make others laugh their teeth off?" Originally, after Shen Miao fell into the water once, she was much calmer. She thought that Shen Miao was suddenly enlightened, but now it seemed that it was the same as before. He was still that stupid and ignorant student. Shen Miao said, "Since one would not understand, why waste time?" Yi Pei Lan, who heard this, laughed out loud and mocked, "Mud can't help a wall, that's all." Shen Yu was talking to Shen Qing and pretended not to hear what was said here, and did not help to resolve the situation. These days Shen Miao did not fawn on them like before, and they were displeased in their hearts. He could not wait to see Shen Miao make a fool of herself. Shen Miao did not seem to hear Yi Pei Lan's words and got up. "I will go for a walk in the garden." After she left, Yi Pei Lan curled her lips. "You ran away because you had nothing to say. You really are as timid as a mouse. Have you said enough?" Feng and Ning frowned. "Have you done well in your studies?" She had some prestige in the No. 2 high school and was pampered by her family. Yi Pei Lan also didn't want to become enemies with her, so she didn't say anything again. Shen Miao came to the garden and walked slowly. Guangwentang was also a place of elegance. The garden was lush with bamboo, ponds and rockery, making it look very cute. When one walked in, one could smell the fragrance of the forest, making one feel relaxed and happy. She only wanted to be alone for a while. The No. 2 students were after all young and energetic children, and she was already a mother in her past lifetime. When she was an empress, most of the time other than facing the greetings of various concubines, she would stay in her own Phoenix Palace Hall. She was used to being cold and empty, so she was too lazy to deal with a group of children, no matter if it was ridicule or ridicule. In the end, she did not put them in her eyes. As she walked, she saw a snow-white glutinous rice dumpling in front of her. The little dumpling was wearing an ivory satin robe and was standing under the bamboo. The clothes should be very beautiful, but because of the round figure it was squeezed out of shape. And the head was still tied up, looking somewhat comical and ridiculous. "Su Ming Lang," she softly said. When that dumpling heard it, he hurriedly turned his head over. Looking at Shen Miao, there was a flash of surprise in his eyes. It seemed that he wanted to pounce over, but he hesitantly stood still and did not speak as he looked at Shen Miao. This child really looked like a 4 or 5-year-old baby. Shen Miao had some headaches. Could it be that he treated her as his mother? Su Ming Lang looked at Shen Miao and pursed his lips, as if he wanted to say something but did not say anything. Following that, his eyes turned red and he softly said, Sorry. Shen Miao was slightly surprised and saw that the corner of the dumpling's mouth flattened, and he was so aggrieved that he was about to cry. In the next second, a lazy voice sounded. "So it is you." Chapter 25. So it is you. A handsome youth walked out from the bamboo forest. He was also wearing an ivory white embroidered robe with silver thread. Compared to that white dumpling, he was really elegant and slender. He stopped in front of Shen Miao and looked down at her with a probing gaze. This youth was extremely tall and Shen Miao could barely reach his chest. As if he was looking at a child, his lips habitually curled up into a mischievous smile, but because of his handsome face, it did not make one feel disgusted. If it was an ordinary young female, one's heartbeat would have accelerated and their face would have turned red. However, Shen Miao was after all not a real budding beauty. She swept a glance at the other party and did not speak. That youth's lips hooked up into a smile and one did not know when an exquisite dagger appeared in his hand. He pointed the end of the scabbard at himself and used the hilt to lift Shen Miao's chin, forcing her to look up. Shen Miao had no choice but to look at the other party. The youth was about 18 or 19 years old but had sword-like eyebrows and starry eyes. His eyes seemed to be like autumn water and his smile was very moving. However, the depths of his eyes made one feel cold. That was a pair of sharp eyes that could almost see into one's heart. Such a person, no matter how frivolous he looked on the outside, one feared that his heart was like a piece of ice that was hard to penetrate. She took a deep breath and took a step back. letting the hilt of the dagger leave her chin. She gently said, "Little Marquise Xia." Xie Jingxing smiled and said in an unclear tone, "You know me? There is no one in the capital who does not know of little Marquise Xia's name." Shun Miao lightly said. There seemed to be some sarcasm in these words, but when she said it, it was surprisingly serious and one could not tell the tone. "I do not know you." Xie Jingxing swept a glance at her and then at the trembling dumpling on the ground. "It is you who let Su Minglang pass a message to the Su family." "Pass a message?" Shun Miao looked at him and suddenly smiled. "It is just teaching him a way to not be reprimanded by father and to divert his attention. Why is there a need to pass a message? Little Marquis is thinking too much." "Thinking too much?" The youth ruminated on these words and suddenly leaned forward, almost forcing Shan Miao to the huge tree trunk behind her. His expression was ambiguous but his tone was very clear. "If I did not think too much, I would have been deceived by you." Shun Miao frowned. Even though Ming Qi was not too strict with the relationship between men and women, but for an unmarried man and woman to do such actions in broad daylight, it was indeed a breach of etiquette. Especially outside Guangwen Tang, there were many noble juniors. She did not mind her reputation being ruined, but was afraid that Shen Xian would be shamed because of her. In her previous life, because of her, the Shun family was destroyed. Only then did she clearly see the good intentions of her parents. In this life she will protect the family. How can she allow others to say anything bad about the Shen family? Moreover, it was all because of her. Thinking of this, Shan Miao said somewhat impatiently, "Little Marquise Xia, what exactly do you want to do by making a punitive expedition?" Xie Jingxing looked at the young girl in front of him. He had always been extremely sensitive to everything. Some things just from the surface he could see the undercurrents. This was all honed after living for more than 10 years. He had killed people on the battlefield, the treacherous fights under the surface of the Ding capital, and the hidden schemes in the inner courtyard. He looked arrogant, but it was not all luck that allowed him to grow so big. There were so many noble juniors in Mingqi, and there were many who were not in the world due to various reasons. He would never treat anything lightly. Su Minglang's one sentence, Su Mingfeng would not think of anything else, and Master Su also felt that it was his son's unintentional reminder. From his point of view it was not so. The timing was so coincidental, and there were too few real coincidences in the world. Many of the coincidences on the surface were all man-made. He could conclude that someone was instigating Su Minglang to say these words, but he did not know what the purpose was. He planned to meet this person for a while. However, when he really saw this person, it made him endlessly surprised. Xie Jingxing originally thought that to be able to say such meaningful words and be from Guangwen Tang, it would be the son of a pillar of the court, or a youth who was about to enter the official career. Perhaps it was to rope in the Su family, or perhaps it was to loosen the reins only to grasp better. However, when he saw this person, he almost thought that it was Su Minglang who was up to no good. It was until that young female called out to Su Minglang that he was sure that it was him. The young female in front of him was not tall, and only reached his chest. Her face was not considered moving, and at most could be considered cute. She looked to be only 11 or 12 years old, with a double ring bun, a round face, round eyes and small lips. Standing there, she was like a lost deer in the jungle. But she still stood straight and dignified, and spoke every word slowly, as if she was a matron that was taught in the palace. Could it be that she wanted to be an empress? If he did not see it with his own eyes, Xie Jingxing would have choked on his own saliva. Looking up and down, left and right, it was just a silly little girl. Until he spoke a few words with her. Her face was childish but her tone was calm. There was not a trace of panic on her face, but instead there was some impatience. This was the first time for little Xie Marquis. When other females saw him approaching like this, they would be so shy that their ears would turn red. But her face was dull and very boring. Most likely it was because she was too young and did not understand anything. But why did she understand the words of the Su family? One of his hands was placed on the tree trunk behind Shun Miao, and from the outside, it was as if he was going to encircle Shun Miao in his embrace. Xie Jingxing lowered his head and leaned very close to Shun Miao. "You are not afraid of me. Little Marquis is not a monster that eats people, so what is there to be afraid of?" Shun Miao lightly said, "If there is nothing else, I will return to the academy first." Finishing, she was about to leave. Stop. Xie Jingxing raised his hand and Shun Miao's hair brushed past his palm, making it itchy as if ants were crawling over. He withdrew his hand and retreated a few steps back to lean against the tree. His hands were folded across his chest, and he returned to that cynical look. What is your purpose in reminding the Su family? His words were as sharp as his eyes, and did not conceal the fierceness in it. It directly rushed forward, but it contained infinite depth. Shun Miao sighed slightly in her heart. Xie Jingxing was smarter than she imagined. With just one sentence from Su Minglang, he was able to find this place. Finding this place, he was able to ask for the purpose. In her previous life it was said that he had a deep mind, but now it seemed that he was a person with a clear mind. When dealing with intelligent people, how could one hide one's true intentions? Unfortunately, she never wanted to hide it. Nothing else, just to protect myself. Finishing this sentence, she bowed slightly to Xie Jingxing and did not care about anything else as she turned around and left. These 6 words Xie Jingxing would understand. Behind her, the youth's lips hooked up as he played with the dagger in his hands. Su Minglang, what is her name? Chapter 26. The residence of the Marquis of Lin and in the Ding capital was indeed magnificent. The late Marquis Madam was the late Emperor's most beloved Princess Yu Qing. Originally, after becoming the prince consort, the military power of the Marquis of Lin and should be taken back. Unable to withstand Princess Yu Qing's coquettish act, the late Emperor actually let her do as she pleased. It was enough to show Princess Yu Qing's position in the late Emperor's heart. Princess Yu Qing was an outstanding beauty, and her temperament was also the most gentle. After marrying into the residence of the Marquis of Lin, she was pampered by the Marquis of Lin. Unfortunately, the Marquis of Lin still took in a concubine, which was the current Madame Fong. If one were to say that Princess Yu Qing was born to be a lady from a wealthy family, and was good at dancing, this Madame Fong was like a pretty jade from a humble family. It was Madame Fong's father who had done a favor for the Marquis of Lin, and afterwards when Madame Fong's family was defeated, Madame Fong's father used the favor to threaten and finally let the Marquis of Lin marry Madame Fong as a concubine. A good concubine was different from an ordinary concubine. She could not be beaten or killed at will. In addition, Madame Fong was really humble and did not have any jealous behavior. Thus the Marquis of Lin did not take it to heart. Most likely the sons of the noble families were used to seeing 3 wives and 4 concubines, and it was rare to see someone like the Marquis of Lin who only took in 1 concubine. The Marquis of Lin did not feel anything wrong. It was a pity that the way men and women looked at things, especially when it came to concubines, were poles apart. The Marquis of Lin felt that it was not a big deal to take in a concubine, as a concubine was only a plaything. The person in his heart was still Princess Yu Qing, but Princess Yu Qing was different. Princess Yu Qing grew up under the doting of the late Emperor, and after marrying into the Marquis residence, she lived a pampered life. Her husband only had her as his official wife, so she was used to such a life. Who knew that a concubine would suddenly appear? And at that time Princess Yu Qing had just given birth to Xie Jingxing, and was hit by this matter even before her confinement. Madame Fong came over to pay her respects to Princess Yu Qing every day. Her dressing was very proper. It was fine if she didn't come, but when she came, Princess Yu Qing felt extremely vexed. If Princess Yu Qing was an ordinary princess, she could casually find a way to secretly trip up Madame Fong, and it would not be impossible to get Madame Fong to leave. But Princess Yu Qing had always been protected extremely well, and had always been an innocent and unaffected person, so how would she use those underhanded methods? It was the Princess Dowry Nanny who thought of a way to secretly find a reason to drive Madame Fong out without telling the princess, who knew that he did not succeed and was even discovered by the Marquis of Lin. Even though the Marquis of Lin was usually unruly in his actions, he had an open and candid temperament and could not bear to see females playing tricks. Thus he immediately reprimanded Princess Yu Qing. Ever since Princess Yu Qing married the Marquis of Lin, it was the first time she quarreled with the Marquis of Lin. She was someone who could not tolerate grievances, so she did not speak about the Momo's matter, and only went tit for tat with the Marquis of Lin. Finally the Marquis of Lin was so angry that he brushed his sleeves and left. She originally thought that the Marquis of Linan would come to see her in a few days, but who knew that a month had passed and the Marquis of Linan was only resting at Madame Fang's side. One must not be sad during a female's confinement period, so Princess Yuqing vomited and became seriously ill. The Marquis of Linan still loved his wife deeply, and wanted to come over to visit Princess Yuqing, but unfortunately received the imperial edict that night, and did not even greet Princess Yuqing before leaving. Not long after the Marquis of Linan left, Madame Fang found out that she was pregnant. As the Zhongfang, when the Marquis of Linan was not around, Princess Yuqing could not set Madame Fang up and even had to protect the child in Madame Fang's womb. Otherwise, if something were to happen, one fear that the rumors in the Ding capital would be that she took advantage of her husband's absence to murder a concubine. In the long run, she was mentally and physically exhausted, and Princess Yuqing's body gradually became wasted and was about to die. When the Momo saw this, her heart was anxious, but Princess Yuqing did not allow the Momo to report back to the imperial family. She got up and wrote a letter to the Marquis of Linan, asking him to come back and see her. She waited and waited, but in the end the Marquis of Linan did not come back. Princess Yuqing died. 3 days after the burial, the Marquis of Linan returned in triumph and was unable to see his beloved wife's corpse and was extremely mournful. Unfortunately, the beauty was gone and only a pile of yellow soil was left. At that time the late emperor was furious and demoted the official position of the Marquis of Linan. It was until the new emperor took office and took pity on his talent and reinstated the Marquis of Linan. Unfortunately, there was no more beautiful and talented couple's story. The Marquis of Linan did not marry a second wife, and there was only Madame Fang in the residence of the Marquis of Lin, and Madame Fang was still the same as before for decades. The Marquis of Linan was slightly concerned about the children she gave birth to, but still put all his energy on the D-son, Xie Jingxing. But Xie Jingxing did not appreciate it. Ever since he gradually became sensible, he had been estranged from the Marquis of Linan. The love and hate entanglement between Princess Yuqing and the Marquis of Lin, and was known by almost every household in the Ding capital. If one wanted to know, one would be able to know. The Marquis of Linan felt guilty towards his son and always tried his best to satisfy him. But Xie Jingxing seemed to like to go against his father, and always made his father so angry that he had a headache. But no matter what, he had inherited Princess Yuqing's beauty and talent. Other than his mischievous temperament, he was a wonderful and outstanding young man and naturally was the dream person of the noble daughters of Mingqi. It was the same today. Xie Jingxing walked into his study in big strides. His courtyard was the courtyard that Princess Yuqing stayed in when she was recuperating. It was far away from the main courtyard and was more secluded. Xie Ding also wanted him to move to a place near the main courtyard, but was rejected by Xie Jingxing. The reason was that he really did not want to see certain people. His attitude towards the Marquis residence had always been cold. The servant by his side pushed open the door and came in with a snow-white porcelain bowl sprinkled with flowers. Madame Fang had cooked this crystal lotus porridge. She said that it was cooked for a few hours for master to warm up. He did not like his subordinates to call him young master or heir apparent, and only called him master. It seemed that this way he could separate himself from the Marquis residence. Xie Jingxing glanced at that bowl. The porridge was cooked until it was sparkling and the color of the soup was bright and viscous. It had been cooked for a number of hours and was emitting a fragrance that made one's appetite rise. He coldly said, "Pour it out." The manservant was used to it and said yes, then retreated. Just as he retreated, a person appeared behind the door and lowered his head slightly before speaking in a low voice, "Master, have investigated clearly. It is the third young lady of the first household in the general residence, Shen Xian's daughter, Shan Miao." Shen Xian? Xie Jingxing frowned. Shen Xian and Xie Ding had not been on good terms for many years, and the Shen residence and the Marquis of Linan residence did not see eye to eye with each other. Moreover, the checks and balances of military power involved a lot of interests. Moreover, the Marquis of Linan residence and the Su family were good friends, so for the Shen family to remind the Su family, perhaps it was to remind the Xie family. But for people who were on opposing sides to suddenly remind them, what was the meaning of it? Moreover, Shen Miao was just a young lady, what would she know? It was thought that the Shen family deliberately wanted her to remind them. Shen Xian was currently far away in the northwestern region. Could it be the second or third household? Shen Gui and Shen Wan were extremely ambitious people, and now that there was a storm in the court, one feared that they wanted to fish in troubled waters. The Shen and Xie families are clearly separated, and for the Shen family's girl to suddenly show goodwill, it was obvious that she did not have good intentions. He raised his eyebrows and his tone was as cold as iron. Continue to investigate. Chapter 27. No matter what kind of storm arose in the Ding capital, or the undercurrent surging, it would always look peaceful on the outside. The annual chrysanthemum banquet was approaching, and because Guangwen Tang's academy examinations were not too far away from the chrysanthemum banquet, it was simply placed together this year. Unlike the previous years, the academy examination had become a grand banquet for the noble families in public. Early in the morning, old Shen Foran sent the eldest maid Shir to the western courtyard, saying that she had invited a tailor for the clothes for the chrysanthemum banquet and invited Shen Miao to pick. Shen Miao nodded her head in agreement. In the past academy examinations, Shen Miao would wear casually because she would only be a laggard and would attract ridicule if she wore conspicuously. Now that the academy examinations and the chrysanthemum banquet were together, it would be inexcusable if there were no clothes made. At the chrysanthemum banquet, the furins of all the officials would be present, and most of them were here to see their daughter-in-law. Thus, as long as there were females, they would dress up beautifully and hope that they would dress up more and more beautifully. Even though old Shen Foran did not like the first household, she still had to put on a face. Moreover, old Shen Foran was a person who only cared about her own interests. If one could use Shen Miao to exchange for a marriage with assistance, it would not be impossible to sell her. Bai Lu appeared to be somewhat happy as she accompanied Shen Miao to Rongjingtang and said, "One did not expect that the chrysanthemum banquet would arrive so quickly. Does not young lady like the chrysanthemum banquet the most? At that time one would be able to admire the flowers." Shen Miao liked the chrysanthemum banquet, but it was not because of admiring the flowers. But in such banquets, she would always be the one who was faintly discernible. Of course, there were Shen Yu and Shen Qing who added fuel to the fire, but she had a stupid and dull temperament and often did not dress up properly, and would only be laughed at behind her back without knowing it. The reason why she liked the chrysanthemum banquet was because of Fu Xiuyi. 1 year ago at the chrysanthemum banquet, Fu Xiuyi was also present. That day she was ridiculed and isolated again. The chrysanthemum garden was filled with beautiful purples and bright reds, and everyone was looking for the reddest and brightest ones. She walked to the corner and saw a pot of white chrysanthemums from afar. Things like white chrysanthemums were probably only used for funerals, so they were naturally not pleasing to the eye. Moreover, this chrysanthemum had bloomed quite miserably. Some of the petals had withered. It was unknown whether it was because of the rain or the wind. It was all alone in the corner, and no one noticed it. Most likely it was because they were in the same boat. Shen Miao felt that she was exactly the same as that chrysanthemum. He was all alone, a pitiful little thing that no one was looking at. Just as he was sighing in his heart, he saw a man in luxurious clothes walk up to the chrysanthemum. He reached out his hand to pick up the flower branch and gently stroked the petals. Someone beside him asked, "Ninth brother, this flower is so miserable. What's so nice about it?" The well-dressed man smiled. "I pity that it's weak and helpless." How pitiful. It was this sentence of pity that it was weak and helpless that made Shen Miao have a good impression of this man. When the man turned around, she was even more mesmerized by his handsome appearance. Afterwards, Shen Miao got to know from the mouths of the womenfolk that it was the current emperor's 9th prince, Prince Ding Fu Xiuyi. Perhaps there was no reason to admire a person when one was young. Fu Xiuyi's words were clearly talking about chrysanthemums, but she felt that she could empathize with him. She thought that if she married such a gentle person, he would definitely cherish her like how he cherished a lonely flower. Unfortunately, she was still wrong in the end. Fu Xiuyi pitied the delicate flower, pitied the world and pitied Mei Foran, but never pitied her. Everything that she had done, in his view, was based on the responsibility of a wife. Those days where they treated each other respectfully was nothing more than a play that Fu Xiuyi put on with her while enduring his disgust. He also did not pity that chrysanthemum and just casually mentioned it, but she took it seriously. "Young lady, Unknowingly she was lost in thought, and did not realize that she was already at the entrance of Rongjing Tang. Bai Lu quickly called out to remind, and Shen Miao then followed Sheer in. Shen Yuanbo was not present today, and old Shen Foran was wearing a green and white embroidered long robe. She was already in her 70s years of age but was still wearing such a fresh green color which made her face look like a female ghost. But she herself was not aware of it. Shen Yu and Shan Qing were standing beside their respective mothers. The second household had 2 Shu daughters, but Ren Wanyun was too overbearing, and in this kind of banquet, the Shu daughters were not allowed to go out and steal the limelight. As for the third household, other than Chan Roqiu, this official wife, Shan Wan only had a Tongfang, not to mention any Shu sons and Shu daughters. Thus in this way, only the D daughters of each household were able to get the invitation to attend the flower banquet. Shen Miao greeted old Shen Foran, and Ren Wanyun looked at Shen Miao and smiled. Little Five is here. Quickly come and pick the cloth. Later Li Nyang will measure for you all. Shen Qing giggled. Second younger sister, and I have already picked and are waiting for you to pick. It was obvious that Sheer came late, but it seemed like it was her fault, leaving everyone to stay in Rongjing Tang. Shen Miao was too lazy to argue with her, and walked to the soft couch that was spread out with the cloth. Li Nyang was a 30-plus-year-old middle-aged woman, and the new clothes of the entire Shen residence were all bought from her family's shop. When she was young, she had learned some embroidery skills from the female officials in the palace, and the clothes she made were also very beautiful. There were 5 or 6 pieces of cloth spread out in front of her, and 1 piece of begonia color, and 1 piece of smoky pink color had already been picked out by the side and were taken away. Needless to say, it must be Shen Qing and Shen Yu. The scene of the previous lifetime was still vivid in her mind. That day at the chrysanthemum banquet, Shen Qing wore a begonia-colored dress with scattered flowers and looked very warm and generous, making her look more delicate than a flower. And Shen Yu wore a bright pink embroidered white pear blossom satin thin dress, making her look even more delicate and pure. And she wore a light yellow dress with the golden necklace and jewelry that old Shen Foran gave her, making her look like a joke that she was not aware of. And that light yellow cloth was picked under the instigation of the daemon and older sister. Shen Yu smiled and said, "Fifth younger sister's skin is fair. Why not pick that light yellow dress? Moreover, it can also make one look lively and cute. It really complements." Shen Qing also nodded her head repeatedly. Correct. Looking at the rest of the cloth, it seems that the light yellow suits fifth younger sister better. Chun Roqiu's lips had a smile, but she did not speak. There was a trace of ridicule in Ren Wanyun's eyes. Shen Miao did not know how to pick clothes. Shen Foran was not in the residence all year round, and her mother was not around, so it was inevitable that a child would have a lot of advantages. The rest of the people in the Shen residence all had their own ulterior motives, so how would they sincerely teach a young lady how to match clothes? Thus in the long run, Shen Miao would only follow beside Shen Qing and Shen Yu, and whatever they said, Shen Miao would just pick. For example, that light yellow material, it was true that it complemented her skin, but it looked too childish and cheap. Coupled with those golden jewelry, it was like a daughter of a landlord. Gu Yu and the rest wanted to persuade her to throw away those jewelry, but she was stubborn and rushed to lose face. It was really ridiculous.